for it.
Yeah, we're just going for it.
Just
Graham
go for
Nolan, welcome back. How's the homestead, buddy?
Actually, recently it's been a little rough, but just pushing through it, you know.
What's what's been going on?
Recently I had a property I had purchased in another state, West Virginia, which is right across the river from where I live. And previous owner had already sold logging rights to it, so I had to deal with that shit.
Damn, he was double dipping.
Yeah, yep.
Oh, that's
Lost
fun.
a pickup truck to it too, because they decided to fell a tree on top of it.
You know, I
Jeez.
think I've been through this exact scenario in a forest operations and harvest class.
Uh,
You know, it's great. Just great. That doesn't sound like fun. So wait, it destroyed a pickup truck?
Yeah, so I had it parked in the woods, and I was actually hunting back in January, and they had decided to, I guess, go through and mark trees down. Well, they had actually had a skid steer with them, and they were chopping down trees to cut a trail to get through the main run of the logging area. And they chopped this tree, and it had come down a ridge. My truck was parked at the bottom of it, and it came right down on the cab of the truck. Luckily, I wasn't in
jeez.
it, so loss of a good pickup truck.
Yeah, but thanks be to God, you didn't lose your life.
Yeah, no.
Damn, that does sound rough. But
Yep.
all in all, like Nutria said, you're still here, and you'll get through it. But yeah, I appreciate you coming back on. I think that honestly, the episode that you were on before has gotten like some of the most positive feedback. Like so many people wanted you back on. But obviously, like you're busy and I'm busy and stuff. But I'm glad that you were able to come back and join us,
Yeah, glad to be back.
especially considering that you have a lot of questions and answers prepared for this.
Yeah, and got a lot of them.
And
So,
the most experience in this area. So, you know.
Yeah, that too. That's the other thing is that I still don't have really any. I got a little a very modest small garden for like herbs, but yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where like you want to start and then it gets warm out to where you can start working on stuff outside a little bit easier, and the next thing you know it's Easter and Memorial Day and stuff, and you're like, oh well, it's already getting too late to do this. I guess I'll do it next year. And so then I guess like the summer before that you want to start planning, you guys start prepping everything.
Yep.
Yep, it's all about preparation and knowing certain times and dates when it comes to, especially crops. That's one of the main ones.
Yeah, because I remember that because I used to work at Lowe's in like the garden department, like the nursery, and the only thing that I really remember is that there's for fertilizing your grass, there's like four stages you're supposed to do, and you're supposed to follow like the major holidays like Easter, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day. So I would imagine that
Oh,
like
yeah.
crop planting follows kind of that same
Yeah,
scheme.
at least for around here, because in Australia it's different, because different hemisphere. The locals around here have all agreed that the frost should stop by Mother's Day, and that by Mother's Day you should already be putting plants in the ground. That's kind of like a locally agreed thing in my area.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that this year we got a couple late frosts because a couple of friends of mine that got their gardens together a lot better than I did. They like set up their beds and everything, and then got some crops going and got some sprouts and everything, and everything was going good. And then there was a frost warning, so they like ran out and covered up all the crops with plastic or all the plants at least, and all that stuff. And they were all worried that all their plants were just going to die.
Yep, and see that's what the benefit of the greenhouse is. The greenhouse will keep that from being a problem.
Yeah. We have like a little. I think it's from Aldi. I think my wife got it from Aldi, but we got like a little greenhouse kit. It's basically just a couple shelves that it's like a stand with shelves that you'd put plants on, or like pots, and then it's got like a greenhouse enclosure thing around it, so I could basically put it on my back deck pretty easily because we have a little thing with last year we did cilantro and basil, and then this year we got basil and dill, and then we're gonna plant some cilantro in another planter because I mean the thing with stuff like that too, like your herbs, is that they kind of just it you can kind of plant them whenever as long as it's warm out and they'll sprout pretty quickly.
Yeah. Plus, another thing with herbs is they don't really have a long duration before they're ready to harvest, and they do
Exactly.
grow
Yeah, that's
sporadically, so
another
you
key
get a
point
constant
too.
supply of it.
Yeah, I mean, even if right after we're done talking here, I go outside and plant cilantro. Like, I'll probably start having a couple of usable sprouts like mid next month.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, man, if you want to start rolling into the questions and answers, or whatever, you can fully lead this thing. I'm cool with it.
All right. So, I mean, the largest question I've had asked, that was the main question. Had about 30 people asked this, about 31 people asked this question. Was when they buy a lot of property, how do you avoid property taxes? Everybody wants to get away from the tax man. The IRS is not your friend, and most states in the United States have a some sort of tax credit for the homestead tax. Everyone usually has some sort of Homestead Act tax credit, and the Homestead Act's been around since 1867. You can take full advantage of it in most states. I'm sure there's probably some out there who've gotten rid of it, but check your local laws. My state has a Homestead Act tax credit. In basically most states follow the same principles, where the less public utilities you use, so if you don't use power coming off of a pole, if you don't use city water, you don't use gas for heat, things like that, the less utilities you use, the less money they charge you in property taxes. So for me, my power, now that I have electricity, I've gone solar, so I don't use any type of power off of a pole. I have my own well, so I don't use water from, the local, and I don't use gas for heat. I use firewood. So for me, I am 100% in the AI self-sufficient, and I get a large tax credit. I usually get about $2,000 credit. So it usually covers my entire property tax. And then you also have to go with how your property's zoned. A lot of your properties you're going to be buying aren't going to be zoned residential. They're probably not even going to have a house on them if you're going to buy off grid. And if you're buying in a semi-suburban area, some places have been zoned agricultural and you just don't know it yet. And when you buy it, your property tax is going to be null and void. Now, if you live in suburbia where you have your house next to your neighbor, you're going to be paying property taxes regardless. But if you're going in the off-grid route, if you're going off-grid, I highly suggest you look at your state's laws for the Homestead Act and see what the tax credits are going to be, because you can really save a lot of money. When I first got into it, I was estimated because I didn't take a loan when I bought my property straight out, and I was estimated to be paying about $4,000 a year in property tax. Now I pay right around $219 a year. So, you just got to look into the local laws and, you work that towards you. And seriously, though, take advantage of that, because no one wants to pay $4,000 a year. I mean, granted, most people who start a homestead won't be buying as much property as I have, but if you're buying 20 acres, you're not going to be wanting paying $2,000-$3,000 on that. You're going to be wanting paying $200-$300 on that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's because I'd heard about the Homestead Act before. I just didn't know like what the minimum requirements for you to qualify for it was.
Yeah, so going into that more, at least for my state, I can't speak for every state, I only live in one of them. In my state, you have to have that property that you live on as your primary residence. You can't have any other residence. It has to be the only one you live on. You have to at least maintain that residence for 6 months before you apply. You also have to, the less utilities you use, the better rate you get. But to even qualify, you have to, like I said, primary residence. You have to make sure that that is the only property you reside in for 6 months before you apply for it. And then you have to demonstrate that this is in fact a homestead and not just you buying property to then sell to somebody to develop it into condominiums or apartments or a resort.
Yeah.
So if you buy 20 acres in the middle of the boonies, they want to make sure you're not trying to just, cash out on it and turn it into some sort of ski resort,
So with like a couple of garden beds and a few chickens.
Not even that. You don't have to have any livestock. As long as they just see you living in the boonies to your life's fullest extent, they don't really care. Just as long as you have no intentions of developing it or constructing something like multiple houses for rent, things like that. I mean, you don't even have to have plants, chickens. You could just be living there in a bivouac. They don't really care. Just as long as you're not sitting there trying to develop it or make additional money off of it to where the state's going to be subverted. They don't really care. If you start living that bushman lifestyle or the homesteader lifestyle, the state just sees you as not the average bear and doesn't collect taxes from you.
Hey, congratulations! You're so weird. We're not gonna tax you. We don't want your money.
Exactly.
Pretty
They're
much.
just like, nah, we're good, mate. But we don't want to go into your bivvy and try and steal your money.
Yeah.
Well, they probably know it's all under your mattress anyway.
Oh no, mine's in the 30-foot well. You have to look in with your head, and then I grab your legs and tip you over. The money softens the blow. It's like
That's
that
funny.
scene in Sparta where they kick him over into the hole. Same thing. This
It's
is
just
Homestead and kick you into the hole.
It's
to
just
fall
like
into your bank.
$100,000 worth of pennies at the bottom.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Count them all out. You can have them if you can count them.
that's right. If you don't
You
break
yell
your neck.
down there for him not to mess up your savings account.
I'll wait till he gets done counting them all, and I'll throw another one in there and make him recount.
Start
Yeah,
over.
That's the main question I had, because a lot of people did ask. For anyone who doesn't know, I own exactly 290 acres of land. It's a lot of land, and most people were asking, how much money was I paying for those acres? And the question to be answered is not a lot of money, and you can do the same thing as long as you read into your local laws and take advantage of them.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a thing too with you get that a lot kind of in these circles where guys are sort of like, I'm just gonna ignore the law anyway, which if you're gonna do that, like I don't recommend it. But if you are going to do it, at least know the law.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
in
Know
general,
what you're
because
subverting.
yeah, because there's a lot of things that you can learn, even like that. Like I had known about the homestead credit, but I just had assumed that it was, you had to have proof that it was an actual homestead. Like you were able to subside off of it for, whatever. Um, and so I just never read into the laws. But if I'd read into the law, like you had said, then I'd find out, potentially in my state, like, hey, as long as I just live here, I get a homestead credit.
Yeah. Like in my state, for example, the more self-sufficient you are, and they don't really care about your food, as long as you're not using their utilities, they just go, okay, well, this guy doesn't use anything, so let him fend for himself. And
So if you had like solar and rainwater collection, you'd be fine. Because
yeah,
that's the other thing too, is I know that at least in my state, if you're on city water, which even the small cities here have water. Like I'm in a pretty small town, um, and we still have city water technically. You can't have a well. Like it's officially illegal to dig a well if you're on the city water.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's same in my state too, and you
I
can't
figured
have a
it's
septic
probably
tank
common.
either.
What's
Yeah,
that?
you can't have a septic system either if you're on city water. They won't allow you to dig one.
You're also not supposed to collect rainwater if you're on city water.
I didn't know that.
Depends on the state, obviously. But
Yeah, that's just big water for you. Drink more alcohol, boys.
Drink more
right.
fluoride.
I drank 17 beers before this started.
I'll let you know right now. I'm on my third pint of Foster's as we're talking.
We don't have Foster's here. Nobody sells it. I guess you'll
I
have that
get
in
my
Mississippi.
local liquor store to actually bring it in. It's in a nice 1 pint green can.
That'd be nice. The bar I used to work at back in the day, they sold Foster's in the big blue can. So,
Yeah, the lager. I drink the
Yeah.
premium. I
oh,
spend
look
all
at
the
you.
money.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
must
well,
be.
all that money you saved on not paying property tax, you can put into beer.
Yeah, you just go
Exactly.
down with a little bucket and scoop out some pennies, and you go to your local liquor store.
Yeah,
Slap the
and-
bucket on the counter. Give me the green
Exactly.
pint.
And if you guys remember that war that started in Angola on June 17th at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, that was not funded by me. Just saying.
It wasn't you at all. No, it must have
Nah.
been somebody else. No,
Nah, I just live in the woods. What do
that's
I know?
right. You don't have anything to do with anything.
Yeah.
You don't
It's
even
probably
have.
So
Big Water's fault.
It's big
it was
water.
all
Yeah.
Big Water's fault. Always is.
It's always Big Water's fault.
Every time we get a drought, it's Big Water. They're holding back on us, just like the Saudis with the oil.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's the same
that's
thing.
yeah. It's like the when they control the stock, like manipulate the supply, so that way the demand goes up.
Oh yeah, all the time. That's another good thing about homesteading is you don't have to worry about supply chains. You are your own supply chain.
Yeah. So my house, which is where the house I'm gonna spend the first few years of my marriage in until we can build. Either way, whenever we get married, my fiance is gonna move in with me, or I guess she'll be my wife at that time. But she'll move in with me, and then we'll kind of start off. But we're actually on her family's land. They have a cattle farm, about 1,000 acres, and most of it they just run cattle on. It's just prairie. It's not the best soil because our parent material here is like it's a chalk because it's coastal plain soils down in Mississippi, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be someone who's a geology nerd, but so it's not the best for just growing things, but it's great for cattle, great for grazing because it grows grass really well and it grows it fast. So they have a few hundred cattle. I am the first house. This house is it's got maybe an acre lot, so I'm just gonna be raising birds for the time being. Probably start off with quail because I'm not. I'm still working like in town right now. I'm working at the university, so I'm going to. Over here right now and slowly moving stuff into that place. But either way, it's what I'm going to do. Yeah, is start out with quail, make a little quail pen, which I could probably have like 100 quail in there, no problem. The size I'm thinking of, and I'm sure y'all know about how easy it is to raise quail and how they are fully grown in 8 weeks. So hatching to fully grown, ready to kill, or ready to start laying eggs at 8 weeks. It's pretty fast turnaround. So that's the initial plan. Then we're thinking about. We've talked about this. She and I have goats, and then from there, I've actually talked to her dad about sheep because that'd be fun. Also, it'd be fun to be able to
Make wool.
make wool. Yeah, exactly. That's literally the reason. Because you talk about having your own supply chain. Think about a few years down the line, what are we going to do about clothes? I'm all about mending old clothes. Like my fiance likes sewing, so recently she just mended, patched up a shirt of mine that I've had for numerous years, which is great. But at the same time, if we can't buy new clothes and stuff, at least not for a reasonable price, then what are we going to do?
Exactly.
Learn how to make
matter
your
of
own
fact,
stuff. Yeah.
when I
Throw on
was
the old
growing up
birthday
in
suit and
Tasmania,
go
it
to
was like
work.
that. Yeah. When I was growing up in Tasmania on a cattle farm, they had sheep as well. I was actually a drover growing up, and a lot of my sweaters and stuff was all wool in the wintertime that my mother would make with the wool that we get from the, well, I guess you'd say the head farmer, and he let us have a little bit, and we'd make it into clothing. Once you get past the itch, it's all right.
Yeah, I actually most of what I wear in the cooler months is wool because
Yeah,
it's not super cold here, but it rains all the time. So
and it's got good moisture wicking and absorption
Ex-
abilities to keep you a little
exactly.
dry.
I can just go out in a wool sweater and like a pair of jeans, and that's good enough for the wintertime here, if I'm moving at least, and it keeps me dry. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that was I just picked up an OD green merino wool shirt and then a couple of pairs of socks for this summer. I'm gonna try to just run merino wool when I go to the field. So I'll report back on that because that's something that I figured out when I started getting into like backpacking stuff before the gun thing. Was that obviously merino wool is kind of like the greatest material ever. Like it regulates your body temperature in the winter and summer, wicks away moisture, antimicrobial, like doesn't stink.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's I actually sleep under wool blankets. That's all I do. I don't have like I have like a comforter kind of thing, but I just sleep on top of it underneath wool blankets, and you know it's kept me warm even when we had like a 9-degree freeze, and I had a broken window in my house. So, you know, it was. I know 9 degrees doesn't sound like anything compared to you, Mister uh, Great Lakes region, but
No, dude, 9 degrees is still cold.
oh yeah, down here especially, we're not used to that. It was
Yeah.
cold.
No, not 9 degrees is kind of like, I'm pretty sure that's like the average January temperature here, but no, trust me, when I go outside, it's 9 degrees out. Like, I'm cold.
Actually, got to break
Oh,
out
yeah.
my wool anorak when I was when it got down to 9 degrees, and I was running around outside in that, and that was fun. It was a fun time.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
always is. I mean,
So,
those are my major things.
Graham, did you get any questions about sheep or wool in your 107
I actually
emails?
did. Let me see if I
Oh,
can find.
shit.
I wrote it down here somewhere. It was something about animals. Let's see if I can find so I can put my cheetahs on and find this shit. Here it is. So one of the, about 17 people asked this question: what livestock should you keep and raise on the homestead, and which ones should you not? So and I also got questions asking which ones I raise. So I guess I'll knock that one out first. So on my homestead, I raise chickens, ducks, quail, a couple small pets that my wife has kept, like Cornish hens and things like that. We raise. I raise goats, both a dairy goat and a meat goat, and hens. I raise a laying hen and a meat hen. And that's one thing you should realize when you get into chickens is that there's mainly two types of birds: one that's generated for laying eggs and one that's generated for meat. Typically, you should keep around the one that lays the eggs and eat the one that's the meat chicken, because for one, you get more meat out of it, and for two, the meat chicken's not going to lay as many eggs. So you might want to have a little bit of each and just keep them separate from each other. Um, I raise like I said, the goats, the meat and dairy goats, and I keep a couple aside for breeding because you can't just keep going out and buying animals. It's not financially secure to just keep out going buying animals. I would say for a homestead, unless you have like Nutria here, a cattle farm, I wouldn't recommend raising cow. They usually the rule is, at least when I was in Tasmania, it's 1 acre to one cow. So it's a lot of land developed for one cow. You could raise pigs and hogs if you wanted to. I've never been a big fan of them. They always stink, and just never been a big fan of raising them. But that's something you could get into. Personally, my recommendations are you raise a meat chicken if you want to, sustain yourself off of your livestock. I would raise both a layer chicken and a meat chicken. You can just raise one type of quail. You can eat them and they'll lay the same amount of eggs. If you want to get into goats, it depends if you just want the milk or you want the meat. You should raise both a dairy and a meat goat. If you just want the dairy, just raise a regular dairy goat. And then if you want to raise anything for wool, personally, I haven't gotten into sheep yet. It's something I want to do, just haven't gotten into it yet. You can raise sheep, and certain breeds are, more developed and inclined to giving wool. Some people want to raise alpaca. I have no inclination to their well-being. I have never taken care of one. So
I just know they have long necks. That's it. That's all I know.
Basically like a little pocket giraffe.
So you haven't started your invasive species kangaroo thing yet?
Believe it or not, and call me crazy. So my wife, when we first got married, she wanted a kangaroo as a pet. She was very serious about this. So I figured it's probably banned, being that in America they ban certain things and don't ban other things. So I looked into it, and you could apply for a license. And I have actually put on order a male and a female red kangaroo. It was a little pricey, not going to lie, but I have actually put on order a male and female red kangaroo, and should be expecting them within 3 to 7 weeks. From actually they're raised. These two are raised in Missouri, and I should see them in 3 to 7 weeks. Well, I'll have to drive out there to pick them up, but they'll be ready in 3 to 7 weeks to where they can be given away.
Damn.
They'll be vaccinated, inoculated, and they'll be off the teat, ready to go.
You should swing on down here to Mississippi. Say hi.
But yeah,
only an extra 6 hours.
And I did get a couple joke questions. People asked about raising emus, and I'm going to tell you right now, you raise them with a rifle, and that's about it. So you raise them and then you drop them back down.
That's what I thought about kangaroos too. I have a buddy who he ended up moving by me, and he lived in Australia beforehand, and he said that kangaroos are just like a huge pest over there. and that
Yeah, they're a little
everyone just
invasive.
pretty
They
much
like to get
shoots
in
them.
shit. Yeah, we have at least. Now, like I said, I didn't live in mainland growing up. I lived in Tasmania, but there was a lot of. We have a donkey population that is actually wild. I don't know if anybody knows this. They're actually they thrive wildly. They're like they're we always call them a wild ass, a jackass is what you usually call them. But think of them in terms of feral donkey, I guess you could say. We have feral goats that have just, over the years of people just having ranches and large farms, and they just get out wild and no one retrieves them because back in the days of colonization, you know, they go to South Wales and go buy property all over Australia and Tasmania, and they'd give 2,000-3,000 acres to one man, and if he loses animals, he's not going to go after them. He's going to buy more. So these animals get loose and they breed, and now we have feral goats, and of course we have the dingo, feral dog, and we got the feral donkeys too. But definitely
Damn.
no emus. I mean, I'm being personally, emus they're a pain in the ass. They can cause more harm to you than you can think, and they don't taste good. So you might as well just shoot them and bury them in a 6-foot hole or incinerate them. Your choice.
I had a good bit of
Mate.
ostrich in my life, but I know not the same thing.
Yeah. Another animal too. If you're serious about horses and pack animals, I also have a mule. I actually got it from a local. He's up in age, so he couldn't take care of it anymore, so I got it from him. And here in a little bit, I'm going to start raising rabbits. It's going to be another thing I'm going to raise. And, on the homestead, you want to diversify your livestock. That way you have, if you have to kill them for food, you have a large quantity of it. You're not just going to, kill what you have and have nothing left. And another thing, too, is I guess this ties into it. Another question asked about hunting and fishing, and that should be living on a homestead. If you live off grid or even have a couple acres with some woods, try and supplement your game with in your hunting seasons in your states. Try and supplement your food with wild game, whether it be a deer or turkey, whatever you have in your area, fish. Try and supplement with that too. Don't just go killing off your livestock. Take from nature too. That's what it's there for.
Yeah, a lot of deer here, a lot of deer hunting, and
Yeah.
I mean, deer is great, but I mean that. Speaking of, I guess on the topic of large game, that does bring up a point with deer and cattle as well. Anything bigger, you'll have a lot of meat, and you need to have a way to store that. And as we know, I mean, with solar, you definitely probably are better off in a grid down scenario. But for people who are on electricity, you need to be able to preserve your food without just refrigeration. And
Yes,
that's
definitely.
something I've been looking into a lot, like smoking and salt curing and everything. But it's not nothing I've actually experimented with yet. So I do have a smoker though. So
I saw a
Yeah.
video where some guys in either like Detroit or Baltimore, or Chicago or something, a bunch of really swell gentlemen, they took like a filing cabinet and they cut it out to make it a smoker. Like one of those real
I'll be
tall
honest.
office filing cabinets, like 5 drawers. I think that they cut out the way that the drawers were and they put like the meat all the way in the top and then the fire on the bottom, or I don't know, they had some funny get up. But speaking about large game, did anybody else, my buddy just texted me this, but did anybody else know that salting your watermelon makes it taste better?
that
Yeah,
sound
in a few locals, they actually put pepper on it too. That and cantaloupe, they actually put pepper on it.
Hmm.
They say it makes it taste better.
I don't like cantaloupe.
No,
maybe if you
Yeah,
salted it.
no, I'll try it, I guess. I'm going to my family's house this weekend for Father's Day. I guess if there's a fruit salad with some cantaloupe, I'll put a little bit of salt on there and give her a whirl. But yeah, I didn't realize that wasn't like a well-known thing about
Yes.
salting your watermelon makes it taste better.
So you know how in the Gospels Christ says you're the salt of the earth. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's there's a reason for that. A few reasons. Salt is great, it's good, whatever, but it actually brings out natural flavors in things. When
Yep.
traditionally, when you talk about people seasoning food, they're just putting salt on it. That's seasoning it. So you're like salting food. It helps bring out the natural flavors and everything. And actually, a lot of times will leach out the tannins. so that they're more kind of present and easier to taste. And so, in the same way, like Christ is obviously referring to people as like, okay, you're bringing out the goodness in the world, whatever. But for us, for our intents and purposes, right now, you salt your watermelon, you bring out the good flavors in the watermelon. Personally, I'm not huge on watermelon. Even though I'm from the South, maybe I just don't fit the demographic. I don't know. But
Dude, watermelon is good. I don't even care.
frozen
Yeah, I eat that
watermelon, I've
with a
had
spoon.
that. That's pretty good. But
Yeah,
Pull that
that's
right out
good
of the garden,
too.
eat that with a spoon.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the thing with salt that's funny is that was there was actually that video recently that went around where that girl was talking about how people were, because she has like a cooking show online or whatever. It was like TikTok or whatever. I don't have TikTok, but and people were telling her that she doesn't season her food, but she was explaining that like when you buy off the shelf seasoning, it has like garlic powder and onion powder and stuff, and it's like she was basically like, I'm using the things that these are from, like garlic powder, the ingredient is garlic, right? Onion powder, the ingredient is onion, like that's in the recipe. And then I already actually knew this. I'm not like a cook by any means. The first time I had ever baked anything was when you gave your bread recipe that I made. But
the lembas bread.
yeah, I made that and it was pretty good. But I promised my wife I was going to try to attempt to make some cookies too, to see if those turn out to be any good or if those are unedible. But yeah, that I actually knew that the when people say like this food needs more seasoning, it means that basically like you need to put more salt on it because like you said, salt brings out the natural flavors. I think too that with the watermelon, there's something about the moisture or something else in it, like because salt obviously messes with moisture. Like if you go to the bar and you throw some salt on your napkin, then your beer glass won't stick to it.
Yeah. I've never been to a bar in my life. I wouldn't know
Really?
nothing about drinking. No, I'm being sarcastic. Sorry.
Oh,
Um,
I figured you to be the guy that's like, because I knew that you drink, obviously, but I figured you'd be the guy that's like, yeah, I've never been to a bar, I just drink with my friends.
um, I guess I've been to a few bars, but most of the bars around here, it's unfortunate, they're like full of like queers and trannies. So there's this one that I went to years ago for my 21st birthday, and that I, was not a great experience because they had like a gay flag there and everything, and I was like, all right, I'm never going back there. Now they do drag shows, so
So
specifically last
you're
night.
telling me that you don't have a lot of pride.
No, I don't. I don't like queers. Not too fond
Yeah,
of them.
Actually,
there's it's fine
this
lines
reminds
to
me
draw.
of a quick administrative point I need to interject. But yeah, so I was uploading all the podcast episodes to Spreaker, and then through Spreaker, I would have the podcast go to Spotify and stuff. Essentially, it's through what's called an RSS link, which you can take the RSS link and put it in any sort of other like podcast hosting service, and it'll automatically, when I upload a podcast to Spreaker, it would automatically go to Spotify. Anyway, Spreaker banned us.
Was that for
And
making
I
fun of gays or?
no, I think that because I had put in for ad revenue, and it was approved, and then the ad revenue got blocked, and they said that there was basically too many listens from one IP address, and so it
Sorry,
automatically
that
gets.
was me. Sorry.
Well, I think that they thought it was like a bot, which I'm pretty sure it was just because damn near all of the listens are from Spotify. So I would imagine that it probably has to go through like a Spotify server to redirect. So I figure that that's probably what the case is. I don't know. Um, but they took down all the episodes. The episodes are still on Spotify because like Spotify just hasn't updated yet. But anyway, what my point is going to be before we continue is that the I went through and I saved the descriptions for a handful of the old episodes. The majority of the episode, I'm keeping all the episodes past like the beginning of 2022 when Geo and myself were became the two main guys. The older episodes before that, I'm going to keep a handful, but I need to go onto a broken hard drive, and it's really slow and very a very big pain in the ass to work with. So I need to get all the audio files off of that and then start uploading to the new hosting service. All of the old episodes, like every episode that we've made, I'm gonna put into a dump on the Patreon. But for the most part, for anybody that goes on the Spotify, they're not gonna see a lot of the older episodes because and let's be honest, they're just not good. But plus there's a lot of topics that I want to re-hit because they weren't good when we did it originally. But
I thought
yeah,
the
so
Catholicism episodes were good.
yeah, those are good. Those are staying on. Those are fairly recent. But yeah, I already have like a list of the episodes I'm keeping for Spotify and stuff. Obviously, this episode will be on there. Everything that is made is on there. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because once I upload this episode, I'll have to upload it to a new service and relink the RSS feed, which will then take out all of the old episodes unless I also upload all of those ones at the same time. So I got a bit of work ahead of me, especially considering the fact that that drive is on its last leg and takes forever to do anything. But I'm just throwing that out there for everyone as the heads up, because at first when I figured out that the podcast was banned, I thought it was because of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg joke I made last episode, but I don't think that it was. Anyway, back to you, Graham.
All right, so I guess we'll move on to another question here, and just for the folks at home, Homesteading episode 1 was a smash hit, better than Marvel's any of their movies. Just saying,
So true.
I am good quality content, boys.
Correct.
So another big question was people talking about. So this is for an off-grid only question. Doesn't really apply if you live in suburbia or in a area with a shelter already on it, a house. So people asked if they buy a property that has no established shelter on it, what is the best way to go about it? A lot of questions were about buying a prefab home or building your own. People asked about sourcing natural lumber from the property or just buying it at a lumber mill or any type of lumber yard. And to be honest with you guys, it's probably best to build your own. It's going to be cheaper. I mean, let's be honest with you guys. When I built mine, now granted, my house is not all, and the pictures are on Instagram. You can see it on the Longhouse page. My house was built out of 2 recycled barns. I had recycled materials that were good that I could reuse. I took that out of a barn, and then I had actually taken lumber and stripped the trees of their bark, and I had charred it so it could sit on the ground as a foundation, and I put a lot of the interior lumber was all taken off the property, exteriors from the barns, and it's always going to be cheaper to build it yourself, and it's going to be cheaper to take it from nature because you already own the property. As long as you can process the wood, you can do with it as you please. Buying lumber, yeah, you might get it pressure treated. It's going to last you 50 years, but you have to look at it this way. There's cabins around my area that have been around since before the American Civil War, and they still stand. Granted, no one lives in them, and they could use some repairs, but they still stand. You could still shelter in them if need be, and they were built in the 1850s, 1840s, and they're still here to this day. And you just got to go into it, and it's going to tie in the next thing. You're going to need tools to do this, and you're going to have to wonder how big of a house you want to build. Because if you build a large house, you're going to need to cut large pieces of lumber, and especially if you're building with living wood, you have to use whole sections of a tree. So if you're out there by yourself, you're going to encounter a few problems with building a large home, such as you moving large pieces of wood the higher you go with your walls and then your roof. And unless you want to be, dwelling on a major hernia, you definitely need to either find out some sort of pulley system and get somebody to help you if you're by yourself doing one of these homes. Prefab, if you have no confidence in yourself, be prepared to, if it's even a kit. I mean, there's a local company, not in my state, but in West Virginia, but my other property I own. They sell a prefab home. It is about $50,000 starting out, and they range all up to about $300,000, and you still have to put it together. So I'm sure, I haven't really looked into prefab homes myself, but I'm sure it's going to probably cost you around $300,000 for a good one, and probably about $100,000 to $200,000 for a small one. So it's going to be in your best interest to build it yourself. And if you don't have confidence in yourself, build up some confidence. Back in the day, that's what people had to do. They carried a rifle on their shoulder. They went out into the wilderness and they built their home. And that's how America started. American frontiersmen was the same way. Go out and build your own cabin. And
Indeed.
that's what I went and did. And I'll highly recommend that you go out, use the materials on your property. It is yours. You use it. You're going to save a lot of money. And I think it's best that you DIY your home. The next question ties into this. They asked, what building materials should you use that will last the longest and give you the lowest maintenance? And
Straw.
this one applies
Thatch.
to even the people for suburban homes. Shingles, in my opinion, are one of the stupidest things that people have gone to on their homes, especially the asphalt shingles, the tarmac shingles. It's one of the dumbest things because if not put on right, simple gust of wind can blow it off and they rot your roof out. And they have to change them about every 10 years. And I've seen people claim to have a shingle that lasts 50 years when I was back home in Australia, and I don't believe it personally. They go bad too frequently, and if you want to keep climbing up on a roof for the rest of your life and replacing pieces of shingle, go ahead. But in my opinion, the best lasting roof is tin. A tin roof, a metal roof. It will last you the life of your building. Your building will fall out and the tin roof will still be there. If you get the right tin, it's not going to rust. If you paint it, it's even better, but it's not going to rust. You're not going to get rust holes in it. It's not like it's steel, it's tin. And homes in Australia, ever since about the 1840s, have been using tin roofs. And I personally, I like tin. You can use cedar shakes. Living wood shakes actually last longer if taken care of correctly than most shingles poorly put on houses. And in the end of the day, tin, I mean, you can buy bulk amounts of tin. You can use it for your roof. You can use it to build a shed. You can use it to build some sort of shelter, canopy, whatever you need to do, some sort of covering, some sort of area that needs to be covered from the elements. And personally, I recommend tin does have drawbacks, such as if it's in the wintertime and you have to clean the snow off your roof, that way it doesn't put too much weight on it. It's going to be a little slick. And tin roofs do tend to draw more heat in because they are metal. But other than that, I mean, personally, there's so many drawbacks to shingles that the few drawbacks to tin just override it. And I'll highly recommend if you want a roof that's going to be less maintenance and more you living in the home and worrying about other things, I would go with tin. Another thing, if you're going to be building with living wood, I highly recommend woods like poplar, willow, and cedar. All three of them, have natural properties that keep
Bug repellent.
insects out. Yeah, so you don't want termites. Termites they'll rot your house out so fast. Cedar wood, willow wood, poplar wood.
Also,
Interior of the house, you could use pine, any type of hardwood, but on the outside, I highly recommend using poplar, cedar, or willow. Keeps the bugs out, and you're going to have a longer lasting home.
also for people in the south or closer to the coast, bald cypress or osage, osage
Yeah,
orange, bodock, hedge, whatever you want to call it. Both are also very similar, extremely resistant to the elements. In fact, you go down. I grew up going down to Florida visiting my dad's family.
I'm sorry.
And what?
You said you grew up going down to Florida. I said I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, terrible place. Except for Grandpa's house, that was cool. But you
The
have
safe haven in Florida.
yeah, the
exactly.
safe house.
Um, you have old like homesteads that are 200 years old, made entirely out of cypress, and the only thing that cypress does is it oxidizes and it turns black. That's it. It's like a patina, on a knife, on like a carbon steel blade or something like that. It's going to prevent rotting and corrosion, things like that, and keeps bugs away. It's really great. And also here, we have, since we're out in the prairie, there's osage that grow everywhere. Now that we use it mostly for fence posts because it doesn't grow with the best form factor, but you could cut it up into smaller pieces and use it as like shingles, for sure.
Yeah, a lot of people like to use cedar for decks and fences and even closets, like interior closets, because the cedar won't basically, like, the bugs don't like to hang out in there, so bugs won't get in your clothes. And then for your deck and for your fence, essentially long term, it's kind of like the metal roof, where like compared to shingles, a metal roof costs more, but you don't need to replace it in 10 to 20 years. You have it as long as the building is still standing. So same thing with cedar, like your initial cost is going to be more expensive for a fence than if you had, normal like a pine fence. Um, your cedar for like a deck is going to be kind of a similar cost to if you use um like composite decking materials, like the artificial deck shit that looks like wood, and but it's going to be lighter, and then you're not going to have bugs like you would with a normal deck, and paint it's not going to rot away or anything like that. So yeah, cedar is and all those other woods that have those properties are extremely useful. That's one thing too, is like I started reading a while back. I had gotten one of the Dave Canterbury, I think it was like the advanced bushcraft book, because I was kind of already like past the basic
Because you're
point.
autistic.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it has a couple of things on like identifying your natural, trees and plants and stuff like that, wild edibles, which I've never been good with. But one thing that I know from that is that there's actually two main types of oak trees. You have your red oak and your white oak. And your white oak is generally more medicinal, and like what kind of natures you can get from, or like it's more medicinal in nature from like what kind of things you can get from that tree. Um, like with the bark and the leaves and everything, and then red oak is more for building. And I guess that the old symbol for before like the red cross and all these like medical symbols, the old symbol for medicine used to be a white oak leaf.
That's a pretty broad statement because there's like a million types of oaks in the white oak family.
Yeah,
However,
well, I'm out here making broad statements. What are you gonna do about it?
well, listen, I'm the
Yeah, we
forestry.
like
I'm
oak
literally
leaf
I'm a
clusters around
forester.
here.
I'm a forester. Okay, what can
Oh
I'm
yeah,
all
name
forester.
every tree.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, name
White
every
oak, Quercus
forest.
alba.
Forest Gump,
No, but
Forest Whitaker.
oh, you call me black. Uh, um, yeah. So with along those lines, I will say white oak, is very commonly used for whiskey barrels. That's what it's um, most used for.
American oak barrels, son.
Yeah, and in fact, it's you can't have American whiskey if it's not in whiskey barrel or non white oak whiskey
Bourbon,
barrels.
correct.
Yeah, whatever bourbon. We have whiskey here too. It doesn't matter in Tennessee. I'm closer to Tennessee, but no. So that kind of brings up a good point as well. I would urge anyone who um, does buy property with timberland on it. Uh,
Damn, your property got the fresh Tims on.
yeah, yeah. I don't live in Detroit, so we don't have those here. But yeah, that's something you should consider is either consulting a forester. I'm sure there's one near you, or I guess going getting an education in forestry because it's a great field. But yeah, something that's really useful is being able to grow good wood, and regenerate hardwoods and everything, which take a very long time, especially oaks. And that's something that is not very done very often nowadays, especially down here, because what's easy is pine, yellow pine. That's what everyone grows. And then up north, it's various kinds of like cedars and whatnot. So and firs and everything. And the thing is, these are crop trees. They regenerate them really fast, and they're generally low quality. That's the same lumber that you're buying from the store. So store-bought lumber is generally terrible. It's like the worst kind of lumber because not only you mentioned it being pressure treated wood sucks. It's terrible, whatever. But it's also the fact that these trees are they are pushed to their very physiological limits from you know having basically the entire lifespan of a yellow pine, mostly a loblolly pine, uh, in 25 years, like a 25 to 30-year rotation. That's really fast and does not produce very good wood. So this stuff is not going to last very long. I mean, it's fine for like maybe interior, like veneer or siding, things like that. But if you actually want structural lumber, it's not the best, and that's why these prefabricated houses are made of that. So something you should consider, especially if you're thinking of buying a piece of land somewhere, is where are you going to get your lumber? Do you have lumber out on your property? Do you have a that you could use? Do you have a neighbor who has like a little wood miser mill or something like that who can help you cut stuff to length and do what you need to do. Because if you're just relying on the stuff from the store or whatever your construction company finds, then that's you're not going to have the best house, and you're going to start to have a lot of issues down the line. And this comes down, I mean, really just goes down to all kinds of materials as well. Like if you're just doing a timber framed house with drywall, that thing is not going to stand up to anything. You talk about snow on your roof very well might collapse if there's too much weight on there. But if you actually build it properly, then hopefully your house will survive.
Probably
Also,
not.
yeah, maybe
Yeah,
thinking about
get sucked
talking
over.
about shingles though. I back in we have lots of tornadoes down here. Uh, but back in when was it? It was March. There was a really big tornado ripped through a town just north of me, Amory, Mississippi. And it literally looked like a nuke went off there. I was up there doing relief work with some guys, and at one point or several points we were at different places, but one we were putting tarps over a house who just had holes ripped in the roof by the wind, just ripping entire chunks of plywood and shingle off. So I'm not saying that those kind of conditions won't rip a tin roof off, but replacing a tin roof may be slightly more expensive than replacing shingles. But if it's properly installed, it's probably not going to fly off like all your little shingles who just get every time there's a gust of wind more than 65 miles per hour, they just start flying. So yeah.
Yeah,
Never asked a
and
forestry guy about lumber. Yeah, I remember when I worked at Lowe's in the lumber area, we would have the pressure treated wood, and you have to, like, we would get big trucks at regular intervals, so we were I would go and take off the whole like pallets and then put them on the shelves and stuff. But anyway, there was a heater on the ceiling, like one of the big heating units for the building, and where did we put the pressure treated lumber? Was right underneath that, just by chance where that was set up. So we'd have this pressure treated lumber, and we'd put kind of the uncommon stuff for like the overflow up there. And if it was overflow, it was probably because the stuff sold real quick, like your 2x4s and your 2x6s and stuff like that, 4x4s. But occasionally we'd have some like 4x4 band of pressure treated wood that had been up there for so damn long because we just didn't, it was like in a weird position or something, nobody wanted to get it. I was a little too brave on the forklift usually, but it paid off in the long run. But yeah, I would like pull that down and you cut the bands and all the wood would just bend and contort in ways that you didn't even know were possible because the when you have pressure treated wood, it's treated with uh um the shit you put on plants to keep bugs off.
Hmm.
I
Herbicides.
can't. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Or sorry, pesticides. Whatever.
Yes, pesticides. So it's treated with pesticides, which are all water based. So you soak it in pesticide, and then you the drivers drop it off at Lowe's, who put it underneath a heating unit, and then it just dries out all of the water and warps and contorts the wood, and then it's all in bands. So then when you cut them, then they just spring out everywhere. So it was kind of funny though because we would take, and your local hardware store might do this too, where we would take all the really warped pieces that were basically beyond salvageable, and we would all we take it all, put it in like a huge band, and then essentially we would sell it for like a crazy discount. And if it sat there for too long, then we knock it down even more. So if you have a lot of stuff that you need to do with smaller pieces, where you can take like a warp 2x4 and cut out a little section of it and do whatever, sometimes you can get some pretty good deals in there. Or if you have we'd even have like really warped sheets of OSB and stuff too. So if you have smaller things that you're trying to make, yeah, you can usually get like a good bulk deal on warped wood if you can utilize it.
Yeah. I mean, something else with pressure treated wood too. It's just in terms of like preserving wood, there's a lot of good ways to do that that don't involve, you know, putting them in a kiln and then soaking them in with under pressure with pesticides. And one of the oldest ways to preserve like fence posts and all kinds of things is basically putting a little drilling a hole in it, pouring old diesel fuel or some kind of oil in there, and then putting a little like tapping a plug in there, and then every year you fill it up, you fill it back up, fill up that little hole, and that'll keep it preserved. And those will last for, uh, I mean, sometimes hundreds of years. Actually, if you look at old power poles,
Yeah,
most of
creosote.
them have that little hole in the bottom that they used to fill with like creosote and other oils and stuff.
Yeah, a lot of guys in my area, they'll go ahead and put diesel fuel, motor oil's a big one around here. They'll put on the bottom of them. I went with the method of charring the wood before I put it on the ground. That was the method I went with.
Either one will work. It's so much better than pressure treated crap.
Oh
It's
yeah,
gonna rot away in
yeah. I didn't.
2 years.
So for me personally, I needed the lumber for my house. I actually went out and bought one of those gas powered sawmills and just took all the natural timber and just processed it myself.
Heck yeah. Do you know what
It's
you
a
were
large
cutting
investment, but it
mostly?
pays off.
Here we go back on the wood grind.
No, seriously. What were you like? Yeah, what were you using?
For the exterior, it was a lot of poplar wood and cedar that was on the property. And for the inside, I just used some pine to fill in the framework and the support. So I was just using a lot of pine. I wanted to keep the pine on the inside, and the more I didn't really have a lot of cedar around. There was good cedar that was ready to be harvested and used in the building project. So I used pine on the inside and a lot of the cedar and poplar on the outside.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I don't need to go and indulge my autism about timber, but that's one thing. Yeah, like I mentioned a wood miser mill earlier. That's basically what you're talking about, like one of those little gas powered ones.
Yeah.
You have a buddy who has goodness, you have a buddy or a neighbor who has one. You can uh call him over, say like, hey, I'll pay you for your time, but I'd like to use this. I need your help, whatever. And something that's great too is, I mean, I know not everyone has family where they are, but friends, family, using these, not using them, but taking advantage of the people who are there to help you, who want to help you to help build your house. I mean, my fiance's cousin, well, two of her cousins actually, they have houses that they built out on the family property, and they built them themselves. Just had their brothers and her dad and everybody come help. And there are even a bunch of Mennonites that live in the area, and they're known to help. They help with cattle sometimes, and they help with building and whatnot too, because just kind of traditional communities. And that's something that you should, if you're going to homestead, you should try and take advantage of and join a more traditional community who actually wants to support each other.
Yeah, because generally the only people now that are homesteading are like, people like that. Like generally your yuppies that live in the city aren't like, oh, I need to move out and buy all this land and put goats and kangaroos on it.
Yeah, and if they do move out to the land or to the country, it's more like, this is my summer home. This is,
Yeah.
I go to the Smoky Mountains every summer and spend the time up there, and that's something I
Or you have the
absolutely hate.
granola girls live in a van.
Yeah, don't even get me started. Something I hate. That's ugh.
Yeah, living in a van down by the river.
All right, Chris Farley.
That's
I live
funny.
in a van down by the river.
What other good questions did you get, or like what were like the other biggest hitters?
Let's see. I got a lot of them about. I got one. It was a pretty big one about what firearms you should use or have handy on your homestead for hunting and personal protection. And
I'm on my 300 blackout arc right now.
I got a lot of people who suggested a rifle with their question, and I got a lot of alarming Mosin Nagant suggestions. And,
Oh, jeez.
Dear.
personally, I recommend that you might as well just go back to a matchlock if you're going to use a Mosin.
Honestly, yeah.
I mean, personally, a lot of times, if you don't have the money, you're not going to be really buying up a lot of guns on a homestead. I mean, personally, never going to use them. I mean, I don't want to personally have a personal arsenal. Some people do like collecting a lot of firearms. It's up to you. Uh, I would recommend having one rifle for your defense and have another one for your game, because people and deer are two separate things. Um, People fire back, deer usually do not. If you have a deer firing back, it's most likely not a deer, and you should see if it has antlers and walking around on two legs,
Yep.
because it's probably not a deer. I got a lot of people asking about
That's why the
notices.
land was so cheap.
Yeah, they got the skinwalkers in it. Got the Wendigo.
Bought Skinwalker Ranch for $1 back in 1989.
Exactly. Sasquatch was just chilling on the riverbank.
All the orbs to keep me up at night.
I have a
Yeah, a
theory
lot
about
of people
Sasquatch
suggested.
later. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
A lot of people out there, they put their little suggestions for what rifle they thought would be best. And I mean, a lot of people, if you have a military background or any type of woodman background, you're going to know which one's going to best suit you. Personally, you want to find a rifle, any type of rifle, shotgun, whatever weapon you want to buy. For one, it needs to be sustainable, as in, like, you need to be able to either buy ammunition or reload it for a very cost-effective way. That means don't go out and buy a French, I don't know, Gras rifle from 1874 because it was used in some battle that you saw on YouTube. Don't go out and buy that, because it's just going to break the bank. You want to buy
I love
something
when you
that
get to
can.
the 1874 part of YouTube.
Oh yeah, yeah. You got those guys with the weird mustaches who they're going to go fight the Zulus at 2 o'clock and go talk about their tea and rifles at 4. And don't go out and buy something stupid. Don't go out and impulse buy something because you saw someone on YouTube shoot it for 5 seconds on a short and you decide that's going to be you. You want to buy something, like I said, that's sustainable. You also want to buy something you can get parts for. So if you go out and you buy, I don't know, a Mosin, are you going to be able to locally get parts for that? Are you going to be going on the internet and getting scalped by, everybody on those auction websites? Or are you going to go out and buy, something, especially here in the United States? The American military has been around for quite some time, and they have quite the amount of rifles they've used over the years that they have dumped off on the civilian market. And there's also a civilian firearms industry in America, one of the largest in the world, as everyone should know. There's plenty of things to choose from besides the Soviet garbage rod. And, it's just, you need to find what best fits you. If you don't like semi-automatic and you like a bolt action more, then you should use that for your game rifle. Personally, for a home defense rifle, I recommend semi-automatic. And I'm pretty much impartial to the Armalite rifle, as impartial to me for a home defense against a human. In my opinion, an Armalite rifle is one of the best defense weapons you can have. And, some people might like Kalashnikovs, or, people have state laws they got to abide by. So there's many factors in there. Just don't go out thinking, I had a lot of people who are just dead set on one rifle and just they're basically trying to just get me to say that. You got to look at just local laws. Think about the ammunition. You can reload your own ammunition, but one thing about brass ammunition is eventually you can't put primers in it anymore. Eventually the throat of the cartridge just gets worn out, And another thing I recommend, if you want to get into it, try out black powder, try out muzzle loaders. Personally, I've had the same muzzle loading rifle I've been hunting with for the past 8 years, a flintlock. And personally, I think a great case can be made that a smoothbore flintlock firearm could outlast any of your modern cartridge rifles in terms of if shit hit the fan and you couldn't go out and buy ammunition anymore, you didn't have the supplies to reload it.
Well, that was something that we had talked about last time too, because I remember that when we did the last one, it was probably right around a year ago, actually, now that I think of it. But I had just gotten a couple black powder guns, and they were super cheap, and that was sort of the thing, is that you can feasibly hunt with them, and like you said, they're not going to be a good defense rifle, but they're going to be a good hunting rifle.
Yeah.
And you can make black powder at home. You can cast projectiles at home. You can make your patches at home. Even like for me, I have percussion caps. I don't have flintlock, which, with percussion caps, are you able to make your own percussion caps? I'm sure you could, but it would probably be tedious.
A local here uses soda cans, and he makes his own sort of concoction for mercury fulminate. I don't know it, and I don't know if I trust it. He is missing 2 fingers. I'll let you know, and that is not a joke. He is missing 2 fingers.
That was
Damn.
just
Still Appalachia,
an
right?
accident.
But yeah,
Completely unrelated.
completely unrelated to the soda can percussion caps. But even if you're running a percussion cap where you have to get the actual caps themselves, and even if you just wanted to streamline the process and go buy patches, that stuff is so damn cheap. You can
Oh
buy
yeah,
if you went
by the
into
thousands.
yeah, dude. If you went into the store with $50, you would come out with a lifetime supply and more. And like you figure too with something like that, your caps, um, it's one cap per round, one patch per round, but you're not firing at the rate that you would going off with your AR-15 and mag dumping into trash. Like that 30 rounds is gonna take quite a while for you to get it off. And to be honest too, like when you're shooting black powder guns for fun, you can realistically get around with or you can go ahead and shoot them all day if you wanted to, but at the end of the day you're probably not going to fire more than 100 rounds a day at most, and that's like a day of going out for fun and shooting. That's not a day of hunting where you might get a round off, or maybe two if you're lucky.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah. A lot about black powder too is especially making. I'm sure everybody knows here. I'm sure people have already learned it here. One of the best trees to make charcoal with is willow, in my opinion. Making your own charcoal. And when I first learned to make black powder, was still in Tasmania at the time, and I was told that you get some willow wood or any type of wood out in the bush because we lived in the bush. You didn't really have much. Any type of wood, but in America at least, willow is one of the ones I've heard the best and I've had the best performance from. And then you just need the sulfur and the potassium nitrate. And in the bush, they used to go to in town, go to the hardware store and buy a stump grinder, stump remover, and they'd use that for their black powder. I mean, there's many ways to skin a cat on black powder. Um, Personally, when I go hunting, I usually use black powder just because I don't deplete cartridge ammunition. And usually, as a single homesteader, you don't need to harvest more than 2, 3 deer to supplement your food supply. Sometimes a little more, depending on how much you're going to eat if you have more people to take care of. But just going out on a limb here, I wouldn't suggest going out and buying the old 1914 Enfield rifle to be your personal defense weapon because it's not 1914 anymore. For example, when I first came to America, first immigrated from Australia to here, the only rifle I had in my possession was a Model 1884 Martini Henry rifle that I bought for shits and giggles back in 1999, and I had bought that because, like the Zulu movie, it was being sold for $200 Australian dollars, and I decided why the hell not. Do I recommend you going out and doing that? No. If you just want something to shoot the shit with, it is what it is. But if you want a dependable hunting rifle and you want a dependable defense weapon, I highly recommend dispersing them. If you want a multi-role weapon, 12 gauge shotgun is another one that has multiple purposes, multiple uses. If you don't want to buy a strictly muzzle loader, you can buy a 12 gauge shotgun and you can make that in your muzzle loader. You can use slugs, shot ammunition. It all depends on what you want to utilize it for.
was about to
But
recommend that.
Yeah, one of the single shot ones. I know that Dave Canterbury online has a whole series about um using a single shot 12 gauge as like your kind of survival rifle.
Yeah, in when I was growing up, and I don't know if you guys know about this company. There was an American company called Harrington and Richardson, and H&R is what they were called.
Yeah.
Oh
And
yeah,
they
they make
made
like bolt actions and stuff,
yeah.
don't they?
So they had a single shot lineup called the Handy Rifle, and they had these rifles where the stocks were all the same. All you did was push a keyway out and change out the barrel. You could have 44 Magnum, 12 gauge. They had 45 caliber, 58 caliber muzzle loading rifles, 20 gauge. They had all kinds of different barrels you could pop on. Those, in my opinion, are the ultimate homesteading weapon because all you have to do is put the base investment on the receiver and the stock, and just buy the barrels, and you have, your game rifle in many different calibers. You could, if you say, say you live in an area where you can hunt a waterfowl, or you can hunt deer or small game like a squirrel or a any type of a rodent, I guess you could say, any type of mammal, and you want to use shot or a slug or a round ball or a high power cartridge, you can get that all out of one rifle compared to buying that 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 guy down the street with his I know what I have World War One Battle of Salem Enfield, or your uh, June 4th, June 6th, 1944 M1 Garand that was at D-Day and he knows so because he was told so kind of guy, or that guy who knew a guy from Vietnam War who was the best sniper in the world and had this rifle, and you don't want to buy into that personally. You want to buy something that is made for the purpose. And I mean, I don't discourage if you're hell bent and set on buying a military surplus rifle, that's on you. But personally, I mean, I've been in the military, and I know what happens to a lot of those rifles. I know how many rounds get put down range out of those rifles, and from experience, I can tell you how some people take care of those rifles. And once rifles are put out of service, they've had quite the service life sometimes, and especially older rifles. Back in the day, they used cordite ammunition, so a lot of corrosion, a lot of damage to the rifling of certain rifles. So I wouldn't exactly jump out and buy one. If you went to your local gun shop and you found one for $100, $200, maybe even less, and there was a sound investment in your opinion, then go ahead. And I'm not going to go on talking about military surplus rifles. I'm sure there's other sources of information out there where you yourself, the viewer, can find that information yourself. But in my personal opinion, a good homestead rifle is one like the handy rifle where you can switch out calibers. If you don't want that, you just want a cheap 12 gauge shotgun. I mean, most gun stores, and especially in my area, sell those things for $40, and that can be a good starting weapon. I know personally when I first started out, I like I said, only had the Martini, had basically no ammunition for it because they haven't made that commercially since probably the 1920s, and I started out with a muzzle loader because it was the first thing I would get my hands on, and after that, I branched out with a couple other rifles, but I would definitely keep your home defense rifle separate from your hunting rifle. Don't expect you're going to take your Arisaka Japanese rifle to sword bayonet and bonsai charge the first man that comes through the door. It's not. It can be funny. It's a joke, but I wouldn't rely on that in a situation. A lot of people think that in a home defense situation, they're going to be a Templar knight. Most of the time, you're probably going to be scared shitless. And holding a bolt action rifle where you have to squeeze off one and rack a bolt, and making a lot of noise while racking that bolt isn't exactly going to be your best alternative. But and especially I had a lot of questions about home defense for a homestead. As long as you're not setting up your homestead down the street from a high crime area or a homeless camp, or the downtown of your local shit city, you shouldn't really have to worry about people trying to take what's yours or attempt to harm you. I wouldn't put a high priority in that. I mean, definitely teach your family members how to defend themselves, teach your kids how to defend themselves, but I wouldn't put a high priority into thinking about defending yourself all the time. It's not like the redcoats are coming and you have to defend hearth and home from King George. That happened long ago, and I wouldn't really think that the whole world's coming to get you.
Yeah.
But that was a very high volume question asked, and
I mean, I'll say
personally,
on the last point, for most people, I'd say, especially in my area, really the most of what you need to worry about, at least right now, is like some tweaker, meth head who's driving through the area and sees something down your, like looks down your driveway or something, and he goes, "Ooh, I want that." I don't know, lawnmower, or he goes to
Me
steal your
every day.
catalytic converter.
yeah,
You stealing everyone's zero turns. But it's like this guy does not want to break in your house and like kill your family. He's not there to invade. He's there to sneak in, take something out of your front yard and sneak out. Kind of like a fox or a coyote or something, which is probably the most likely thing that you're going to have to deal with. Pests, varmints, critters, as I like to call them, who are going to come and mess with your livestock, mess with whatever else. I don't know if there are hogs up where y'all are, but feral hogs are a big thing down this part of the country.
Yeah, we had a few sightings. Luckily, we don't have them in full blast.
They will destroy your your property, destroy fences. They'll spread diseases, do all kinds of terrible stuff. So that these are things that you
They're
should be
just like
concerned
me
about.
for real.
That's not a good thing
Yeah,
to be.
did
But,
like a hog.
but it's like these are probably the most likely threats for most people. And yes, an AR is really useful for that. But for me personally, I bounce somewhere between, like modern, like tactical AR plate carrier guy, or like cowboy slash Daniel Day Lewis from Last of the Mohicans. So
Oh yeah, that's
I'm
what I like
some
with my flintlock rifle.
yeah, I'm somewhere in there. I mean, my first gun was a lever gun, so and I still have it and
Yeah,
always
those
will.
are amazing firearms, especially the American-made
Oh
Winchesters.
yeah.
Amazing
Yeah,
firearms.
yeah. I've got a Henry, one of like the 20 some, I don't know, early 2010s, which they're still good quality, but like pre-COVID, American gun companies were all so much better than what's coming out today.
Oh yeah, especially the original ones too.
Yeah,
My first hunting rifle I actually purchased here in the United States was a Savage 99,
that's
and
a classic.
it's in 3855 Winchester, and um, I've got to say it was very, very. I had my mind set on a Winchester. Growing up in Australia, I watched a lot of John Wayne, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, things like
Yes.
that, and Clint Eastwood. So, when I came to America, the first thing, because for those who don't know, Australia is a just an oceanic Soviet republic. Uh, that's all they are. You can't own guns. When you can own them, they have to be locked away. In Australia, you have to lock your firearm away. So if you own just, and this is why America is 10 times better. Say you own a reproduction British brown bess musket, and
Yeah.
because I actually personally knew someone who had this incident happen, that musket he owned had an overall length of right around 4.5 feet. He had to actually have a custom gun locker made to store it away.
His
I
muzzle
mean,
loader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's going to go out there and load powder, patch, and ball to cause widespread havoc? Besides, of course, the British themselves. That's what they did across the world for
Honestly,
you know, 80 years.
if you could go and commit like a mass killing with a brown vest, then honestly,
You've heard it, Chief.
you earned it.
You're free to go.
Yeah, it's impressive, but that's obviously it's just like you're saying. It's not obviously. We all know. I mean, how the cookie crumbles. It's not out of because of safety concerns or anything like that. It's
It's
just
for control. It all
Yeah.
boils down to control. And that's one of the reasons why I left Australia for America, and one of the reasons why I started Homestead, because you make your own decisions.
yeah.
And some decisions can be stupid. I've learned the hard way on numerous occasions. And but yeah. I mean, personally, like I said, in my opinion, with the whole firearm topic, I have seen people down south with the Armalite rifles who shoot the hogs, and the Armalite rifle is another one. Like I was talking about with the barrels that can be changed out. Armalite rifles can have multiple calibers. It's only 2 pins to go to the next caliber. And that's more of the modern take on the old utility rifle. And I'm a fan of everything. Whatever fits you personally. But I guess just to end off this question with its answers, I wouldn't be keen to go running out and buy the old 1914 railroad iron and timber. I would go find something a little newer with a little more parts availability in case something breaks. Because just like a car, guns are mechanical and they have moving parts that need to be cleaned, lubed, and sometimes break.
Yeah. Well said.
Definitely.
So I guess another question. This was asked almost as much as the firearms question. Was vehicles. People asked what vehicles they should own. They asked what brands they should own. I'm not really going to get into that. That's
2006 Silver Pontiac Grand Prix.
Yeah, those are the ones that hog up traffic and cause incidents of road rage.
Yeah,
Cause a lot more than that.
I went on a ramp this morning. It was pretty short, but it was about people using turn signals, and it was all because of a 2006 Silver Pontiac Grand Prix, and maybe not 2006, but somewhere around that year.
When
Some
I was in
old
Australia,
shitty.
it was Holden. Anything Holden. Holden Commodore, things like that. Those people that
Holding
are
these
some
nuts.
Ford cars, a couple of old Fords. They would Falcons, things like that, hog the road. Or the guys who drive BMWs, you know.
Here it's
But
Dodge Rams.
oh, Dodge, so like in Australia, vehicles we have a lot of American vehicles, Ford, General Motors, some of the largest selling ones. We also have Toyotas. Uh, so here in America, you have many things to choose from, both old and new. And it all depends on your skill. And this goes, I'll tie this in with what I said in the last video we made. Learn trades, guys. Go out there and learn some trades. Don't be just a bump on a log. Don't go into homesteading not knowing a thing. Learn some trades. Learn how to run some wire. Learn how to change your own oil. Don't pay
Learn how to weld.
don't pay other people to welding especially. That's one of the things I learned and made me lots of money. Learn trades. Having a liberal arts degree is going to get you nowhere. Having certain degrees is going to get you nowhere. Right now, we have a booming back home in Australia, in the European Union, and in America, where AI is coming about, and a lot of people who had computer jobs are now, teetering on a certain unrecoverable point. But for these vehicles, learning how to maintain them is pretty easy, depending on your vehicle you own. I mean, like we said in the last video, vehicles that come with electronic computers, they can be very costly to repair, and the computers can fail. They're only a computer. And just imagine the computer you have in your house, put that in a truck or a car that's going down the road with dust and grime and oil and all kinds of things getting on it in all types of temperatures throughout the day and the year. Things break down. Cars break down. Trucks break down. So on a homestead, if you're going off-grid and you're going to live on a property that probably doesn't have a well-developed road or in an area with not well-developed roads, I'm sure anybody who lives in the American South, I haven't been to certain states down there, there's a lot of roads that aren't really well developed. And in my area in Appalachia, there's a lot of roads that flood out, they fall apart, they're just not well maintained because you're not the priority of your state in some remote location.
We don't actually have roads here. We
have a lot of gravel and dirt paths here.
Yeah.
My way back is gravel. I laid the gravel out because I was tired of the mud holes. But I recommend personally a four-wheel drive. Four-wheel drive can get you in and out of a lot of situations. Four-wheel drive most of the time are your utility vehicles. I do highly go against buying certain manufacturers of automobiles, especially here in the United States. There's certain automobiles sold here that we got over in Australia. They have a different name for them, same vehicle. And because of some American regulations, they kind of didn't turn out well. A lot of your vehicles made by a company formerly known as Datsun, now known as Nissan, or I guess you guys pronounce it here Nissan. Nissan doesn't really make good vehicles, in my opinion. I've never seen a good one, and I worked as a stint as a mechanic before I went in the army. I don't like them. Personally, I don't think they're good vehicles. They terrible fuel economy. Their transmissions are weak. They're not very strong, and they're very, very, very prone to rust. So anyone who lives above the American South is going to know rust is a major issue.
Yep.
Salting of the roads, and if you live in coastal areas near salt water, you're also going to have a lot of issues with rust. Personally, a well-built 4x4, Toyota makes a great 4x4. I'm not really too well versed with a lot of the American vehicles, such as the pickup trucks like the Tundra and the Tacoma. More of your older Toyotas, like maybe 1997 and further back. We had those in Australia. They were known as the Hilux in Australia, and they might have been known as the Hilux here.
Yeah, we had them here
the old ones were known here as the Toyota pickup, and then that
Just the
became
pickup.
the Tacoma. The Hilux is slightly different. I believe that the Hiluxes, for the most part, are diesel, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
on
in
that.
Australia now they're mostly diesel. We used to have gasoline ones way back when, but everything's gone really to diesel because a lot of times diesel's cheaper to produce, and just
Especially
fuel
at home.
economy. And you also have your American home brands. You have Ford. Personally, I've had a lot of good Ford vehicles. I also don't recommend going out and buying new vehicles. I mean, if you're going to be on a homestead, you're going to want a vehicle that's going to start and run every single day. You're going to need it to work. And it also has to deal with your application. So if you're just needing a vehicle that you can throw stuff in a bed, usually a little ute, things like the small trucks, the Ford Ranger,
The Rangers are
things like that.
sweet.
It was a very small vehicle. You can throw things in the bed, just carry them around. If you're looking for something, you can pull a small trailer. Maybe you're going to transport livestock around. You're going to maybe sell goats at local fairs and things, make your money that way. Haul a little bit of firewood, make some side money. You always have the half-ton lineup of pickup trucks throughout the United States. The Ford F-150, the what else? The Chevrolet 1500, the Dodge 1500. Never owned a Dodge, so I can't really speak on Dodge. I never owned a Chevrolet either, so I can't really speak on them. I'm sure people have their reserved vehicle brands that they like.
That's like the
Personally,
weirdest thing is like the brand loyalty to vehicles.
oh yeah, people will
Like
be loyal to the foil, loyal to anything they like.
yeah, it's just funny though because like I forget who I was talking to, but I mentioned something about the Ranger, and they were just like shitting up a storm on Ford, and I'm like, you know, me and like my first vehicle is a Ford Ranger, and my family's owned quite a few Fords, and they've all been pretty good. Like it's like you said, right? With any vehicle, you're gonna eventually it's gonna be at the end of its lifespan, especially up here in the north with all the salt. Um, but the last year I've been driving a Jeep Wrangler, which I had always said that I was never going to buy a Jeep, and then I needed a new vehicle, and at the time all the Toyota pickups were way 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 overpriced, so I went ahead and I bought a Jeep because I figured that with that I have an SUV that's true 4-wheel drive. It's very good off road too, and I could put a trailer on it and essentially get more utility than the bed of a truck. Granted, with the truck bed, you always have it on you, so um,
Yeah,
you don't need to plan ahead and pack the trailer or anything, and nobody's going to drive around with the trailer on all the time like an empty trailer.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I
yeah, pros and cons to everything.
yeah. I have a Toyota 4Runner. Yeah, that's the one. And no, it's I didn't buy it new. I definitely paid a little more than I wanted to for it because I bought it earlier this year after wrecking my truck. But frankly, it wasn't a bad deal. Honestly, as far as used cars go right now, it could have been a lot worse. But that's one of my favorite things about it. Obviously, nice, spacious SUV is nice. Whatever, going to be nice for kids as well. But part of it is just like the transmission is really simple. Those just 5-speed 5-speed Toyota transmissions are super easy to work on, and that low gear ratio doesn't have the best like mileage, on the highway or anything like that. But I can crawl up anything. I won't get stuck anywhere, and having to go drive around the pasture and everything, um, that's really useful. It's really nice to have. And just talking about utility vehicles just in general, having something that is able to be used on the homestead. You can't buy your little dinky little car. Heck, my parents bought like a Toyota Camry or something like that back in like 2019. It was something, maybe it was a Honda or something. I don't know. Either whatever. It was one of those little tiny dinky Asian cars, and I mean, like this thing would scrape when you went over a pothole. It was that low to the ground. It's not something that you can take anywhere serious. Certainly not around here. And they live in town over in South Carolina. That, and it was bad enough there. It would be terrible here, and that's goes for most places. If you're living out, I mean, like I have to take a gravel road, long gravel road that goes through a bunch of timberland to get to town. So, and then sometimes it floods. Sometimes there's water all over the road because there's a creek down there. When it rains, especially in the wintertime, it just gets flooded. And so that's just, I mean, part of it is if you're living living out of the way, it can be tempting, like, to get some nice, like, you have people that like overland or whatever, which, side note, overlanding is not real. It's literally just sleeping in your car. You're a hobo. Get over it. But a lot of these people, they're like, all right, I'm going to get my homestead. I'm going to have my cool tricked out vehicle. But Graham, I remember the last episode you talking about your old diesel, which like you can just raid a grease trap and run off of that. And that's something, my
Yeah.
next vehicle is going to be an old diesel pickup. I don't know what I'm going to get, but I'll get it. I'll figure it out
Yeah.
because that's something I want.
So, for example, like my growing up in Tasmania and Australia, we have a lot of roads that are just dirt and they go on for hundreds of miles. You could drive 4 hours and see nothing but a dirt road, you know? Cars overheat. There's been times where we've done military maneuvers when I was in the army, and you'd see some old truck from the 60s back in the bush where somebody broke down, they pushed it off the road and left it there. They couldn't come back to recover it, you know?
Till I
Um,
recover it for him.
yeah, you take all the copper wire out and leave the rest.
Yep.
But
Eat it.
like I was saying with the trucks, you know, um, most of the time either an SUV or a truck. Like one of the questions was, what vehicles do I personally own? So I own 5 vehicles that I currently have running, and I have a couple of projects I'm putting together. And the main thing about buying vehicles is low cost, high return. Buy something cheap, even have to put a little bit of money to fix it up. But it's going to always pay much, much more back into your pocket if you use it for work, for daily transportation, making you money. So the vehicles I own, the first vehicle I purchased when coming to America, because I didn't have anything when I first got here, I bought this old beater Mitsubishi Galant. It was the only thing I could get my hands on, and I wasn't going to hold it for long. The first vehicle I bought was four-wheel drive. It was a 1966 International Harvester Scout. I don't recommend for everybody to go out and buy the oldest vehicle possible. They do take a considerable level of maintenance knowledge. They are older systems, and there's not a lot of service information around anymore for the older vehicles. But if you think you can go ahead and do it. So I own a 1966 International Harvester Scout, which is just a 4x4, kind of like the Ford Bronco and the Jeep. I own a 1986 Ford Ranger that has a Mitsubishi diesel engine in it. I own used to own a Ford pickup truck with a diesel engine, which I am pulling out and putting into another Ford pickup truck. That is a diesel engine, which that's the one in the last video I talked about using grease oil and used motor oil. And then I have a kind of like a daily driver, 1995 F-150. And then my most recent addition was a 1966 F-350. And that's kind of like my tow hauling truck. Kind of tow everything around with that. And until I get the diesel back up and running. And especially with fuel type, all right? So gasoline, of course, I'm just not going to go on a rant about mechanical things. Everybody can learn that for themselves. But gasoline requires air, fuel, and spark from the spark plug, which requires electricity. Gas is put in the cylinder of the engine. The piston comes up, compresses the air, it sparks it, blows it up, sends it down, sends out the exhaust. Diesel does not require a spark plug. It just requires heat from compression. So, in theory, diesel engines are kind of more for the people who, especially the old mechanical ones. If you in that whole EMP is going to fall and knock out my grandfather clock and my computer and my phone, diesel engines will, in theory, survive that a little better than a gasoline engine car, especially the new ones with computers. And I wouldn't recommend anybody out there who has a diesel engine who listens to this podcast. I wouldn't recommend just dumping motor oil right into your fuel tank, especially on newer diesels. For one, they're computer controlled now, so they probably won't even start. For two, newer diesels, very finite in their operation, so anything that's not really diesel fuel that gets in there might shut it off. But older diesels, say 2002 and backwards, you can dump motor oil them and run them just the way they are. I would mix it with diesel fuel first before you just dump it straight in. But yeah, older diesels in 2002 and backwards, especially the ones that are purely mechanical with no computer whatsoever, run perfectly fine. And like I said, vehicle choice all depends. If you just need a ute, just drive around in, like Nutria said, the 4Runner, with SUVs, Ford Bronco, 4Runner. I think Chevrolet has I think it's called the Blazer. All those little vehicles, the SUVs, they're great for just running about. In Australia, we used to call them literally what they are, runabouts. That used to be the name for SUVs back in the day in Australia, was a runabout.
And then you guys call them utes.
Yeah, utes. Yeah. I had a little Mitsubishi back in Australia, a little Mitsubishi Triton, little aluminum flatbed on the back, manual transmission, straight trucker. But
I should
You know,
JB Weld an Isuzu. Uh, what was it? The Isuzu Trooper to
oh
like
yeah,
a Ford Ranger truck bed.
yeah, the Isuzu Trooper. Whew, man, bringing back memories now.
That and the
Um,
Geo Tracker for the wife.
oh, yeah, basically a Suzuki sidekick for us. That was the Suzuki sidekick in Australia.
I want a
But
Suzuki Samurai. That'd be fun.
and another thing too, I've got a question, a little bit off topic, but I got two questions which kind of stood out to me. I didn't think really most Americans knew about these. I don't know if anybody knows what these are called, but they're a Japanese K truck. I don't know if anybody's heard of them
Oh
before.
yeah, the
Yes.
3-wheeled things.
Yeah.
Uh, they're four wheels. It's like a how do I describe it? It's like a
Like
cab
the
and a
flat
bed put
front,
together
real
on a
little one.
unibody. Yeah, it's like little 3-cylinder engines, usually power them along, usually 660 cc's. That's what defines them as a K truck. A lot of people I had two questions about K trucks in general, and then a few people asking with other questions. So a K truck is really good for loading it down and driving around like a ute. They get great fuel economy. They get like in American miles to gallon because some people use the UK imperial system, some people use liters. Roughly 43 miles to the gallon. They're geared to have high torque output. Now they're not going to be the fastest thing in the world, and they're definitely not going to meet up with American highway standards. So don't go out on the interstate in one of these things. I'm telling you right now, they usually top out miles per hour probably around 60, 65 miles an hour. You could get them up to 70, but they're so small I wouldn't take it up that far. Another thing with these, people do drive them in the States. I've seen them personally here in my state. I've seen people driving them. We had them in Australia. Um, Parts aren't exactly the easiest thing to get. You can't just go to your local parts store and order parts. You have to go on Amazon or any of those online or postal order websites. I wouldn't highly recommend them. It's like a little pet project that you just drive around. If you have something else, then yeah, go ahead. But I wouldn't make that your primary mode of transportation. I wouldn't recommend it. And a lot of imported vehicles, I wouldn't recommend that either. You really want to buy something that you can get parts for here in America. Because in a homestead, if something breaks, you have to fix it quite quickly, especially if it's your only mode of transportation. And, like I had a couple people ask, like, types of trucks. And like I was saying, if you wanted just a little Ute, Ford Ranger, Mitsubishi had some pickup trucks for a little bit back in the day. America really doesn't have a small pickup truck market. They might have some more. I'm not really up to date in the new American vehicles. I know back in the day they had the Ford Ranger, the Chevrolet S10, things like that, real tiny trucks. Those are good for just being a ute, throwing stuff in the bed and carrying it around. Then you have the half-ton pickup, the 1500s, the 150s, the 100s. They're good for livestock, lumber, little things. If you're going to start hauling things like tractors, equipment, say you have a farm on your homestead and you want to buy a tractor. And that was actually some other questions I'll get to later. That was a big question there. They have the 3/4 ton truck, the 250s, the 2500s, things like that. That's usually when you start getting into diesel. Then you have the 1-ton truck, the 350. And really on a homestead, you don't need anything bigger than the 1-ton truck. Anything larger is not really necessary unless you're running your own lumber yard or something like that, or you're running a heavy equipment business out of your homestead. If you're just homesteading and you're just using it to haul things around for the homestead, you don't really need larger than 1 ton. And it's all about, choice, like Nutria said about the, being geared to a lower gearing, your transmission, you build up. I'm not going to get into that now. You can research gearing all day long on different gear ratios. Different gear ratios affect your speed, your top speed, your fuel economy, how high your engine revs. So you want to find something that fits you the best. I had a local actually a couple weeks ago contact me. He had bought at one of those Gov auctions a old military Chevrolet pickup truck, and he wanted to know why the truck wouldn't go faster than 50 miles an hour, and it screamed. He thought maybe there was a mechanical issue. And the way the military set these trucks up, where they would run around on airfields, so you don't really need to go faster than 45 miles an hour, so the truck physically wouldn't go faster than 50. So now he has to either A, sell the truck, or B, re-gear it. And, it's just things that you have to look into when you're buying a vehicle. Research it. Research the gear ratio. Research the transmission, what model it is. See how good they are. I know a lot of Ford trucks, they use the Mazda transmission. We had the same Mazdas over in, or Mazda, whatever you guys want to call it, over in Australia.
Mazda.
Some people call it Mazda. I have a lot of bogans over in Australia call it Mazda. I call it Nissan. Some people call it Nissan. They look at me funny when I say certain things. Uh, and you gotta really just research. For example, my International Scout has a 3-speed transmission. So you have shifting 1, 2, 3, and you're done. There's no more keys. So over 50 miles an hour, the engine RPMs get pretty high because there's nowhere else for that engine power to go. You just, you know. So you really need to find the vehicle that best fits you. I would definitely recommend 4-wheel drive, something with utility capability. I wouldn't go out and buy the Subaru Outback because, there's no real utility to that.
Hey,
And they,
now I used to have a Subaru Outback. I did a lot of shit I shouldn't have with that thing, but
let me guess, breaker control arm perhaps?
I did snap a rear control arm at one point, but it was uh it was kind of a fucked thing that I hit, and it was something that I don't think anything would have gotten out of.
Yeah. And another thing too, when it comes to buying older vehicles, some people like newer ones, some people like older ones, and this is just my personal opinion. I personally like a carbureted vehicle over electronic vehicles. They're easier to service, in my opinion. Once you just know the general knowledge of a carburetor, it's easy to adjust for the different seasons of the year because carburetors do have to be adjusted between the winter months and your warmer summer months and different elevations in the mountains or on a coastal region. But I personally like a carbureted engine because there's less things that go wrong. There's less moving parts inside the engine, especially on the older ones. There's not a lot of chains and belts and things like that can go wrong. Not a lot of sensors, electrical wiring. So it all depends on your level of knowledge and how much money you want to spend on a vehicle, and then how much money you want to put into maintaining it. A lot of the older Toyotas, incredibly dependable transmission, incredibly dependable truck, incredibly dependable 4-cylinder engines and 6-cylinder engines and those things. Personally, I'd like to find an older Toyota with a 22R engine in it. In Australia, they were great, and they're for sale here across the United States. Ford, for example, one of their best motors back in the day, the 300 inline six. Of course, we have the 4-liter Barra over in Australia, which you guys don't get here. Amazing motor. Ford had the 300 inline six, 300 cubic inches. The thing was a beast. We've had local junkyards up here drop glass inside of them to detonate the motor, and they'll still run on it. Chevrolet, they have wonderful V8 engines from what I hear. I've never owned one. But you need to find what truck or ute or SUV best suits your purpose, what things you're going to use it for. And if you have to buy multiple vehicles, I wouldn't recommend, if you're going to go a lot of off-road, a lot of mud trails in the woods, wouldn't recommend taking your large pickup truck. I know in America there's a lot of 4-door long pickup trucks that are usually like 21, 22 and a half feet long. I wouldn't recommend taking it out in the woods, as the wheelbase will cause your truck to sink or get stuck because of the surface area it's covering.
Yeah.
Things like Nutria's Full Runner or older like military Willys Jeep perhaps with the shorter wheelbase will glide a lot better through the woods. So it's all up to purpose. What are you going to use it for? How reliable do you want the vehicle to be? What do you want the vehicle to do? What fuels do you want it to run on? It's all things you have to research personally. I'm not going to really get into all that because it's just too much. It's something that you as a consumer, if you're going to buy a vehicle, should be looking at anyway. Don't go blindly buying a vehicle. And so I don't know if you guys have anything else to add to that.
I'll say, I got a Toyota Tundra, 4-door stuck, literally just on flat ground. I mean, that it was in winter time, and the ground is just mush here in the winter. But that long wheelbase is not great for literally anything off road. It's nice for towing. If you needed to tow a trailer full of livestock, that'd be one thing. But man, that that'll sink right into the ground.
Yeah, I when I got my Jeep, I had to get a 4-door because family. But with the 2 doors, they are very cool, and the 4-door luckily is overall my wheelbase is still fairly short, so I have yet to get stuck in that thing, and I've only had it for a year, but I've already done a couple of pretty sketchy things in it, and it's been completely fine. And any point that I thought that I was stuck, as soon as I put it in 4 low, I was not stuck. Um, but yeah, I'm kind of envious of the dudes that can run 2-door Jeeps and live.
Yeah, and four-wheel drive vehicles, sort of the short wheelbase ones. I mean, like my International Scout has a wheelbase of 100 inches, 2 doors, 3-speed transmission, has a four-wheel drive with low and high range, and I take it anywhere. It always performs. Mine is a little special because mine was a ex-military vehicle. Mine was a United States Marine Corps that was actually used in Vietnam,
Oh wow.
and it has a military suspension. It's what's called a closed knuckle suspension. A lot of the older Toyotas use those. They're very, very rigid on off-roading capability. They don't use the typical ball joint or the kingpin of older vehicles, and newer vehicles, of course, use the ball joint. And it's pretty rigid. I will say, I don't know if anybody knows about the International Harvester Company. They're old, and they're not around anymore. Um, they went away in the 1980s, before my time. Um, So definitely old. You definitely want to find a vehicle brand that has parts availability. Don't go out and buy something strange because you saw somebody in a old car show have it. A lot of locals here have very, very old cars. A lot of them are still so old that they are actually, a lot of your newer vehicles are on a 12-volt system, so your car battery is 12 volts. Their vehicles so old they are on a 6-volt system. So, that raises questions of, can I find parts? How much do I have to fabricate? I know with my project I've taken on, the 1966 F350, which I now use and drive, there was a lot of things I had to take from newer vehicles to make this one work. Certain switches that have gone bad from being, 50, 60 years old, where I've had to take it apart and take something off a new vehicle. I used parts off of a 2001 Honda Odyssey for one of the switches I had to replace. So you definitely don't want to buy too old of a vehicle. I had 2 people with the vehicle questions who suggested, just like the people with the guns, suggested a certain model of vehicle. One guy had suggested a 1950 Willys pickup. I wouldn't really go on that. They don't really make a lot of power. They don't really go far. They don't really go fast. And they just use more fuel than it's worth putting in them. You want to get something probably from the 1960s forward. Personally, in my opinion, I wouldn't go with the 50s and the 40s. Unless you're buying like an old Jeep, they're pretty stout. You could probably run one of those around. I mean, in Australia, we had people run those old army Jeeps from World War II in the bush, and they'd leak the motor all out and they dump it back in. So it's all about finding a good, reliable vehicle. You don't want something that's going to be a money pit. You don't want something you're not going to be able to work on. Personally, I wouldn't buy something too new to where if something goes bad or something breaks, it's going to be sitting for weeks and weeks while you're waiting on parts. And at the end of the day, you need something to find something that works with your needs, And
Yeah.
So,
When I wrecked my GMC, it was a 2010. It wasn't really bad, but the airbag went off, and it was totaled because apparently they just discontinued those airbags. So that's something to consider. Like who you're buying from. Toyota doesn't like discontinue parts, and there's a lot of kind of backwards compatibility. You can use old parts in newer vehicles because they just don't change that much. But like GMC, not the case. They will just Chevy too. It's like every year it's a new thing, and if you don't, basically, if you don't stick with that, if you don't keep buying their new stuff, then you're not going to be able to keep repairing your vehicle.
Oh yeah, it's I've had a lot of locals here. They've been here longer than me. I've encountered some people up here in their 90s up here in the mountains, and they still drive the vehicles they moved up there with. One local who's he is a Lenape native. I believe that's how it's pronounced, Lenape, something like that. He's a native. He moved from Baltimore City after World War II. His father had taken him there, and he was a veteran of the Korean War, and he decided to move his family to the mountains, and he bought like I said, a 19, believe it was a 1950 Willys pickup. And he still drives it this day. Some people hang on, some people know how to work on them. Other people, they dump the car off in the junkyard. So it's all about, definitely, for example, for the airbag situation. Only one truck I own has an airbag. And everything else, for example, the 66 International Scout has no airbags, has no seat belts, has no air conditioning. The windshield wipers are powered off of vacuum from the fuel pumps. There's no electric there. And it's got heat. It does have that. You have heat.
That's all you need.
Yeah, as long as you have the heat, as long as you don't freeze. You can always roll the window down. But, a lot of my other vehicles, they have, only one of them has an airbag. The rest are all, no airbag, no seatbelts. But, I wouldn't highly recommend running around no seatbelts, especially living in a very, high traffic area. I wouldn't exactly be, testing how much windshield you can go through,
Yeah.
It would be definitely not testing that one out.
Yeah, a few years ago, I was entertaining the idea of importing one of the Russian UAZs, like basically their equivalent to the Jeep.
Yeah.
And I found out that importing a vehicle isn't that expensive, but I guess that there are like certain importation laws.
Yeah, here in the United States, 25 years and older to be imported in.
Yeah, see, I didn't know that when I started this endeavor, and I was looking around, and then I was like, okay, it's really not that much to import a vehicle. It's like $2,000, and then I realized that nobody sells parts for that, and to ship a part from Russia. At the time, it was only during COVID, but now obviously with the war and everything, and importation bans and all that stuff, having like a 6 or 7 or 10 or 15-pound thing that you need to ship, like a starter or something, it would be expensive as hell, and it would take forever.
Well, I'll tell you what, when I was in the Forest Service, there was a guy who bought a UAZ he actually went a city on the Chesapeake Bay, I believe it was Annapolis, and bought one, and it ran off of kerosene. So, he couldn't just go to the regular petrol station or gas station and put a gasoline petrol in it. You had to go find someone who had kerosene and dump that in there. So, you live and you learn, right?
That's so funny.
Stunk like hell, too.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I betcha.
Driving a big old candle around.
And another vehicle, I don't know if I haven't said this already, don't buy a Land Rover. Be smart. Be smarter than that. Don't buy a Land Rover. Just be smart. Don't be stupid.
And what about a Land Cruiser?
Now, Land Cruiser, that is a vehicle of class.
I know.
Land Cruiser in Australia, they put diesel engines in them. We turn them into whole trucks. My buddy, before I left Australia, had his own welding and equipment repair business, and he would tow a large military trailer behind his Land Cruiser with a diesel engine. Yeah. And it was an absolute machine. It ran like it was on rails. Toyota in general, in my opinion, I'm very impartial to Toyota. They make a very, very good vehicle, with some exceptions.
There's a pretty good saying that I've heard, and that's, if you want to get to your destination, get a Land Rover. If you want to get to your destination and back, get a Toyota. If you don't want to get there at all, get a Jeep.
Yeah, the Land Rover, when I was growing up, we had a lot of old British Land Rovers. Thing to be concerned about, British Land Rovers, up until about the 1980s.
Leaking?
Yeah, they leak, but they also use their own pattern of bolts. They don't use the ones you use here in America, the metric and the standard. They have their own. It's called the British standard. You need a whole other set of tools to work on those.
Holy shit.
Isn't that just great?
Yeah, they're usually called Whitworth is what they usually call the bolt pattern. Or BSA is another word they call it. A lot of old British motorcycles are the same way. But in Australia, they used to say, if there's not oil under it, then there's no oil in it.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. If it's not leaking, then it's empty.
Yeah, Land Rovers are known for you shifting into a gear and you create another neutral. Or because they didn't synchronize. Not really going to get in the whole mechanical thing, but they didn't synchronize transmission, meaning that you had to double clutch it to get it into the next gear safely without damaging anything.
Which is funny. You have to double clutch to not damage anything.
Yeah, and it's older vehicles like my 1966 F350 isn't synchronized. So in order to keep grinding down on the gears, I do double clutch. But most of your modern vehicles are synchronized. There's going to be not a lot of grinding. As long as you know what you're doing, you're not going to be grinding any gears. But Land Cruiser, and I don't really know what the market is for Land Cruisers here. I'm pretty sure they're all gasoline for the most part here. But diesel ones, they don't make a lot of power. They make a lot of torque. And especially with a working vehicle, you want to look at the figure of torque, not so much power. Uh, yeah, Toyota, in my opinion, makes a pretty well built vehicle. Like I said, never drove a Tacoma, never owned a Tundra Tacoma, so I don't know about the pickup lineup here. But I
Tacoma's
wouldn't.
nice. Tacoma's very
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, they're just small. Like if you're somebody that has kids, fitting a car seat in the Tacoma is already going to be rough, and then trying to fit two in there is not a thing. Like even for the Wrangler, I was pleasantly surprised that I can fit one in there. But if I need to fit two, it's going to be a little difficult. But I'll manage.
yeah, that was the reason why I bought my F-150. I bought one with the cab is extended, so you have the little bench behind the driver and the passenger seat. Because
Yeah,
I have 3 kids now, and can't really fit them all in can't really fit them all in the inside of an International Scout or a Ford Ranger. So,
damn dude,
safely
you
fit them in
sound
there
busy
safely.
as hell. You got the 290 acre homestead. You still go out and train with the boys, and you got 3 kids.
Yeah, and I have tried like I said, my ultimate goal was to start a community, and I've worked closer to that. I'm hoping soon to start a what they call, I personally don't like to call it this, but they call it a homestead. Basically, it's a large community that gets together to provide for themselves. And I've had numerous people come forward and ask me if they could buy part of the property and turn it into their own little homestead in the West Virginia side. So I'm working out the details with them and letting them have their own little community shaped up and teaching them how to, live on their own. Because they're tired of living in their town area because, as we said
Australian
earlier,
warlord.
certain cultural effects, certain things going on these days with America kind of becoming more liberalized for some folks that do not like that,
You mean
and they
black
want to
people
retreat.
worship and gays everywhere?
Yeah, the banishing of Christ in this Christian Western society.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess so. Moving on from the vehicles, people asked about equipment, tractors. For example, I don't push a plow by hand. I decided that I'm gonna
You
let
sure
my
kangaroo and ox instead?
yeah, I get the bullwhip out too and make them work for it. And so in America, and especially in Australia, we've used a lot of American products over the years. Growing up on a farm, of course, on a cattle farm, they had crops as well. And one of the big, once again, international harvester. They had a lineup of tractors called the Farm All tractor. Um, Anybody who lives in rural areas should know that well. And the Farm All tractor usually came in a letter series. So the big, A, B, C, D, things like that. And they also had smaller ones like the Cub. Um, a tractor definitely does a lot of work. For example, I bought a Ford tractor, 19. And once again, these tractors, the older they are, the better compared to vehicles. The older they are, the better they are. I bought a 1939 Ford 8N tractor, and it's got somebody put hydraulics on it, so it's a hydraulic pump that you can move things with, and it's got an A-frame lift. So when I was building my home by myself, I was using this lift on this tractor to lift the logs for the beams for the roof. So it was less work for me using the machine. And at the same time, I can take that off, put a plow on, I can plow, I can put cultivators on it, I can cultivate the crops. So having a tractor, you can do so many things with a tractor. I now own 5 tractors now, and you can really get some work out of them, and you can make one of them do all the work for you. If you only want one, you can find the one that best fits you. Tractors and equipment. I don't really own any equipment. I did buy a skid steer. That's about all the equipment I really own,
Love
besides
skid
the
steers.
sawmill. Yeah, skid steer is the ultimate. Some of us can't. All of us can't own a Komatsu bulldozer and a lot of welded panels on it. It's highly frowned upon, especially when you start knocking over buildings with it. But
Semantics.
a lot of people asked about equipment like ATVs, UTVs. Personally, in my opinion, I'm not a big fan of the whole ATV, UTV. They're very expensive for no reason. I've seen people buy them for $29,000. You can just buy a Jeep for that.
You can get a
You really
skid
need
steer
to,
for that.
yeah. I bought my skid steer for $1,400.
There you
All I
go.
had to do was replace a fuel pump on it and got it running and ready to go. And that's where, like I said, the trades come in. You're going to need the trades to maintain these pieces of equipment. One of the things I purchased that is, I guess, kind of in the realm of UTV, before I had my International Scout, and I still had my Galant, I was looking around, and once I bought the Scout, I found this man selling it's called a military mule, M274. It's basically an American four-wheel drive platform. It's really what it is. It's a platform on wheels, and it's got a little two-cylinder engine, and all four wheels turn at the same time. So you can drive around with three wheels, take a wheel off, and drive around with three of them. And you can put about, I think, a quarter to half a ton on this platform, and it has become a very utilitarian thing for me to load things up and take it around if I don't want to fire up one of the other vehicles. And very easy to maintain. They still sell parts for these things. Probably not the easiest to find, but I would definitely side against trying to go out and buying a side-by-side. The UTVs, as they call them, they're very expensive, and they only have one use. That's going out on a trail. You can buy a Jeep and do the same thing, and the Jeep can go out on the highway too. So equipment, you definitely want to find something that works for you, and literally works for you. Manual labor is just going to cause injury, and especially if you're on a homestead and not close to medical facilities, you don't want to be in that situation. I've been in that situation before. It's not the best thing you ever want to put yourself into. Yeah, you
Sounds
just don't
spooky.
want to.
I mean, heck, I have a back injury right now, and it's debilitating. I don't want to imagine how bad it would be if I were out on the homestead with like a broken leg.
Especially
just laying there waiting for help that's
Yeah.
never going to come.
Yeah.
Like when I first started building my house, when I first got to my homestead, I had my International Scout, and literally everything that I brought with me was shoved in the back. I had a tent. I later made a like a bushcraft teepee style thing, and while I was building the house, and I lived out of that. So if I got hurt, it was only me. I had nothing else. So if I injured myself, that was it. And especially with some homesteads, you're the provider for your family. If you hurt yourself, it's going to put a toll.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
find
you
things that can work
you
for
sprain your ankle, and the wife has to come out with the Martini Henry to put you out of your misery like a horse.
Oh, she has to come out with the bull rifle. Martini Henry really pisses me off.
Yeah. That is a point,
But,
though, being the provider. I mean, I know for you, Tyler, your wife stays at home with your daughter, and you go out and work. That's the same way I'm going to do it. Graham, I don't know if that's the way you're doing it, but generally in this kind of community, that's what most guys are looking for. They want to homeschool.
yeah,
They want their
my wife
wives.
stays at home with the children.
Yeah, which is it's great. That's the preferred way of doing it. But you are talking about making your equipment work for you. You're the sole provider. If something happens to you, you get hurt, you're out of work. That's really bad. So like there's kind of this temptation, especially. I'm younger, early 20s, so I mean, there's for me, it's kind of I'm still invincible. I can do whatever, and then I hurt my back. I can still work, but it's not fun. It's not easy to deal with that, and
Yeah.
it's like as you get older, potential for injury increases, and guys just need to be taking care of themselves, looking out for that, and making sure you don't do stupid stuff that just can destroy your life, basically.
Like join the military.
Yeah, like join the military.
Yeah, that destroyed my life right there. That was one of the decisions. I decided, oh yeah, join the military, it'll be fun. And then you go to some tropical island where everyone wants to blow your head off, And
Yeah,
then they tell you, oh, at the end of the day, pick up that 80-pound bag and carry it because do it because we said so.
I
That's not
blinded
service
myself as a
related.
child, so then I couldn't join the military.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah,
part of my
that's
plan.
not service related. You don't need that.
Yeah,
That's just called preventive maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Breaking your back in the military before you have to break it out in the real world,
Well, he just broke his back, so
Yeah.
maybe you should have joined the military. Then at
Yeah.
least you wouldn't have to put a down payment on a house.
So true.
Exactly. Be like, hey, look, we're going to put you to school for free, but too bad you're brain dead. Sorry.
That's why we need to send you to school.
Sorry, buddy. You have CTE. Get over it.
Well, there's actually something with I don't know if they have anything similar in like the Australian military with like benefits or anything, but like with the military here, you can get the GI Bill once you do your 4 years or whatever. There's another thing too called excuse me. Oh man, sleepy time. There's another thing called vocational rehab, where basically if you have any sort of disability rating, you can get unlimited free schooling past your GI Bill, just because the gist of it is like, hey, I'm injured. I can no longer do the work I was doing before. It's your fault I'm injured. You have to pay for me to go to school to learn something else. So guys will get multiple master's degrees and stuff and just make money while they're already working and all that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
we
just
have
something
things like that
for
with the
guys
pensioners
listening that
programs.
don't know about that stuff.
Yeah, on for example, I was in Afghanistan. I was in Afghanistan for probably 11-month tour. We didn't really go in there for long, and mostly made America do the heavy lifting for us. We used to stop on American bases and take their things. They had nice shiny things. Uh, but I was in Kandahar and Helmand, and in Helmand, when we went from Helmand to Kandahar with the British forces, I actually received an injury. Was shot, um, and it was unlucky because it was a ricochet. It came off a rock and decided to put itself in my left ass cheek. And you know, when I got home, they put me on 3 months back home before put back in active service. And that we have a pensioners program where if you get certain amounts of disability, you can buy homes, free schooling. We have a vocation where they will teach you a trade like welding. For example, I chose welding and kind of picked up all the mechanics from the farm life, but I chose welding as one of my things. And probably should have chose engineering. Probably would have been rolling in money, but uh, those things. Like I said, you're going to want to learn the trades, and that's going to keep you fixing everything. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have to fix something because it won't start, or I have to weld something because it broke, or I have to replace something because it's just worn out from age. There's so many
Yeah.
things you have to do, and especially when I built my own home. Personally, like I said in the last podcast, I lived like a barbarian. I first built this house. I had no plumbing, no electricity, and then woman. I had to have it all. So you have to learn these things. She wanted
Yeah,
electricity, she wanted plumbing. I had to do these things.
I'm gonna
So,
be living
you
in the
know,
house without most amenities for a little while until I'm gonna, get it set up and whatnot for her. But like, I don't need power. I'll be fine. I don't need internet.
yeah, for a while there, about 3 years, I didn't have anything, and then I joined the Forest Service, and they gave me a little mobile hotspot thing and a little Microsoft Surface, one of those little computers.
Hmm.
But other than that, I didn't have anything. Didn't really want anything, to be honest.
Yeah, it's always
But
been. Uh, I'll be honest. I mean, I met my now fiance um, back in no, February. Sorry, February of 2022. Then we went on a first date in like May, and then I asked her to marry me after 2.5 months. Just Catholic things. And but up until that point, basically, I was pretty much content on as soon as I graduate, moving out somewhere by myself and just living, like you said, like a barbarian. Did not care. But woman,
um,
woman,
and
When I bought my
yeah,
house, there was already electricity, so
nerd.
yeah,
learning something from this one. Yeah,
What an
I bought
absolute
a
absolutely.
nerd.
piece of dirt. I put my house there. The man, the myth, the legend, the construction worker. Um, so I guess I'm gonna try and wrap this up with these. There was a lot of questions pertaining to tools, so I'm just gonna kind of put them all together. A lot of people asked about what tools they need and what supplies they need to buy before they start a homestead, and how much money they're gonna need. Um, these questions, the money question wasn't asked enough. More people asked how to avoid taxes than how much money they needed. Um, Concerning, but to each their own. Uh, Personally, if you're going to be buying a homestead with a structure already on it, you're probably going to need about $14,000 saved up, especially in this economy. And that might go up depending on what state you live in and your area. And this is after the property's already purchased, you need to have $14,000 disposable income right after the property's purchased. If you do not have a shelter and you're going to build your own and prefab it, building your own, you're probably going to need right around, give or take, $18,000 disposable after the property's purchased or financed, to how you're going to do it. If you're going to go DIY with a prefab instead of DIY, I'd suggest about $36,000 disposable income. Like I said, I personally don't recommend going prefab. Go DIY. You build it yourself. You'll appreciate it more. It'll last longer. For tools and supplies, general automotive tools, working on your own vehicle, buy some easily warrantyable at your local auto parts store. Don't go out and buy the big brands. I know in Australia, you guys have in America, tools like Snap-on, things like that, automotive tools. Too expensive for the amount of times you're going to use it. Wouldn't buy it. Wouldn't recommend buying it. Buy
I
it as a
agree.
cheap set of sockets and wrenches and ratchets, hammers, things like that, pliers, screwdrivers.
I
Keep some of that around.
I don't know
The
that I've
automotive tools like screwdrivers, they can cross over to your regular tools too.
yeah, I don't know that I've actually paid any money for any of the tools that I have. I just acquire, socket sets, and I've got like probably a million 10 millimeter sockets. That's just the
Yeah,
way
and I
that it
mean,
goes.
another thing too is, guys, another question that was asked that I actually skipped over, and this ties into this too. People wanted to see how much money they could save putting furnishings in the house. Same thing with these sockets and these tools. Go to yard sales, go to estate sales, go to refuse sites. What people throw away, you could still use. I mean, when I first started out, I was like a gypsy. I went from yard sale to yard sale. Like, oh, this old man died. Well, let me take his tools. Oh, well, they're just selling it for nothing. Let me take that. My sink in my house, I pulled from a local refuse site. Somebody had thrown it away. All it needed was to be welded, fixed a crack in it. I had a galvanized wash bin in my tub. Found that somebody had thrown it away. It was perfectly good. Reused it. There's a lot of things people throw away you can reuse. Don't be the guy who's going to buy it new. A lot of my tools are used. Just because somebody else stopped using it doesn't mean they're bad. Especially hand tools, they virtually never go bad until you break them.
I mean,
But like I
I
said,
go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, you can go ahead, Nutria.
I was just gonna say I had a pair of needle nose pliers, which I can't find them right now, but they were my granddad's, probably 60 years old, and literally just as good as new. They still work.
Oh
That's
yeah,
just the
I
way that
mean,
most tools are.
the old saying is take care of your tools that take care of you.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, you definitely want to buy, and a lot of your American tools these days, no matter what the brand is, they're mostly made in China. It's anywhere in the world. It's not just America. China's like the sweatshop of the world now. But buy something you can easily warranty. If you break it, you want to be able to get another one. Buy it with a lifetime warranty. You can always replace the tool. And like I
Yep.
said, you want to buy some automotive tools, buy some sockets, some wrenches, a couple hammers, screwdrivers, pry bars, things like that. Things you're going to be using when working on a car. You don't really have to get too in depth. If you buy a new vehicle with a computer, buy like a little code reader, one of those little scanners, in case your check engine light comes on, something like that. Homesteading, for automotive, you want to bring some oils with you, coolant, water, whatever you use in the vehicles, of whatever your owner's manual recommends. Bring some of that out with you. If you're going to be building your own home, you need to, of course, get the tools to build your own home. Saws, whether it be power, hand, it's up to you. But some saws, axes. If you're going to be cutting a lot of trees, chainsaws, mauls, wedges, things like that. If you're going to be doing a lot of woodwork, you're going to be doing hewn logs, you're going to need the various types of axes. Maybe you're going to be peeling bark, you're going to need the various types of tools for that.
Draw
So you
knives.
really get the tools set out for what you really need to do. Don't be out there just buying those little cheap gimmicks where this is the one socket that fits them all. You're going to have a lot of teas if you buy one of those.
I don't understand why anyone doesn't just, only use a crescent wrench and channel locks, because crescent wrench can double as a hammer, and then your channel locks can basically be the ultimate adjustable. And
Well, look, I'll tell you, when I bought my 1966 International Scout, when I arrived at the guy's place, he said it's been sitting for 15 years and it won't run. I said, okay. I started it, fixed it up with a Leatherman, and left his property.
Sounds about right.
And he was very upset that it's at 15 years, and I used a Leatherman to fix it, and a couple pieces of fuel line I cut and brought with me. And, it's certain things where you can, one tool can be crossed over. You have a hammer. You can use a hammer on an automotive application. You can use it for driving nails. You have a pair of pliers. You can use it repairing things around the house. You can use it for your car. Same with the screwdriver. So just buy the tools you're going to need for your vehicle or for your house if you're going to build it, or building, anything really. Buy the tools you know you're going to need. I wouldn't go out and buy like specialty automotive tools. If you get that far in, most likely your vehicle's pretty much fucked. Don't go out and buy like I'm going to go out and buy the $3,000 scan tool and the $20,000 air conditioning machine. And, another thing people had asked when they asked about the vehicles was how to change your own tires. A lot of people know how to take it off and put it back on. Not a lot of people know how to take it off the rim and put a new one on. And you can do that on right outside in the woods as long as you have the necessary tools. Something to break the bead, something to remove the tire off the rim, put the new one on. So buy those too. I mean, I've done my own tires right here on the homestead in the right there in the middle of the field. You don't need a concrete floor and a lift to do things. Definitely buy some jack stands and a floor jack for your vehicles. You want to have some chains, some pulleys, some rope for dealing with the logs when you build a house if you're going to DIY it. So you definitely just want to map out what you're going to be doing on the homestead, and that will tell you what tools you're going to need, and then you out from there. If you're going to do a lot of farm work, buy some hose. If you're going to be doing a lot of digging, some shovels, a mattock, a pickaxe, something like that, you need to buy what you're going to need for what application you're using it for. Other than that, I think that was about. I had a question about archery too, about making your own bow. It's pretty simple.
Atlatl.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That'll throw a little dot into somebody's side.
I didn't say use an atlatl for home defense. That's your game.
Yeah, you climb up in a tree and you just get him right in the back of the neck.
I'm going to be like David.
Scalp him, hang it up, make a little effigy of him.
Use a sling, just smack people in the face.
Exactly. Except our slings now are unleaded gasoline and styrofoam.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean that's about all I had for the questions. A lot of it, is a lot about hunting, fishing, things like that, firearms. Somebody asked how I hunt my large amount of land, and I guess it's pretty simple. I mean, I just kind of hunt it. You just got to kind of track where the animals go. I wouldn't personally recommend buying 290 acres if you ain't got the cash for it, because you're going to put yourself in a lot of debt. So I wouldn't personally recommend doing that move. Somebody asked, I think I answered this in the last question, how many acres do you need to start? And then, like I said, it all depends on, how many people you're going to have. 20, 40 acres is usually good for a 4 to 6 person family. Very good for a 4 to 6 person family. So yeah, I mean, that's about it. I got a couple like more joke questions. One of them was, do I wrestle crocodiles?
Yes.
The answer is definitely yes. I mean, just like Florida Man, I'm going to wrestle a crocodile just like any other human being wants to. The primal fury. Have I seen cryptids? That was one question.
Yeah, you had a Bigfoot story, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. So I might as well share that with the general public.
Oh, heck yeah.
So about, I guess it was about January. It was right after I had this whole logging incident going down. I had promised a local, the same one with the Willie's pickup. He's 94 years old. He's a Lenape native. And he moved to the area in the late 50s, I believe 56, 55, something like that. Right after he got out of the army from the Korean War, when he was wounded. He moved up here, created his home, had his first child in 1957. He is I believe he is a 2 great-grandfather, I believe, or great-grandfather, something like that. Yeah, he's a 2 great-grandfather. So he was born in 1929. He's quite the age now. And this story takes place in about 83. So in that time, where I live now didn't have a highway running to it. It was a series of back roads and 2-lane roads that were always washed out. And in the late 70s, early 80s, the state had decided they wanted to run a major highway to the Appalachian Mountains here in the state of Maryland. And one of the obstacles to that was at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains of Maryland, there was a large mountain range called Sidling Hill. It stretches from Maryland to Pennsylvania. It's very large, very tall, and the only way to get through it was to dynamite it. So for a couple months, they started bringing in road crews, and a lot of traffic was in the area. And Sidling Hill actually stops about I don't know, 10 miles, 15 miles from my property, and his property is right on Sidling Hill. So they started dynamiting in about December of 1983, and one night right after Christmas, I believe he said December 27th, 1983, his wife woke him up in the middle of the night and said she heard a loud howling noise. He chalked it up to
As
the
one
fact that
does.
she was just overreacting to something like a coyote. We have coyotes up here, and we have mountain lions, and they scream pretty loud at nighttime. Sounds like a woman being murdered, and so he just told her to go back to sleep. And the next night, December 28th, he woke up not to hear any noises, but nature's call. He says around like probably about 3:30 in the morning, and of course they had an outhouse. So he goes outside to relieve himself, and it's full moon with a little bit of overcast because they're calling for a snowstorm. Well, when the clouds would disappear, he could see down to this creek. It's a large creek that ends up in like a small pond, or small lake maybe is what you call it. It's pretty deep. He said direct center of it's probably about 6 feet, 6.5 feet deep, and it drops off pretty quick from about 3 to 5 feet, and then it gets 6 feet deep, 6.5 feet deep. He gets out of the outhouse, and he had one of those little Coleman gas lanterns, and he just so happened to, out of the corner of his eye, see something down at the lake. So he was straining his eyes, couldn't see well. He figured, maybe somebody was, on his property, maybe just seeing things. So he grabs a pair of binoculars, goes back out, barely sees a figure in his pond, his lake. So he thinks maybe it's one of the construction workers that got lost in the middle of the night. Maybe they were drunk, walking around. He was going to go assist this person. He didn't have the mentality of somebody trying to steal my things. So he gets down there, and he hears a grunting noise about maybe 75 yards from the edge of the pond. So he thinks maybe there's a bear. Maybe this man was trying to get away from a bear and went into the water. Well, the water's cold. I mean, it's December. It's frigid. So he figures this man's in a lot of trouble. It's cold. Maybe he's disoriented. So he goes back, grabs his rifle, and runs back down there to help this man. He thinks there's a bear loose. He's hearing this grunting noise. He's never heard it before, but he thinks it's probably a bear. He gets about 50 yards towards the pond, and he hears the water thrashing. So he thinks maybe this man is, drowning. He's going to get there and try and save this guy. 40 yards from the pond, he hears a groan that stopped him in his tracks. He had never heard that before. He said he could feel it in his chest. That's how loud it was, so deep in baritone. And he stopped, and he started just staring at the figure in the water, and realized it wasn't thrashing about like he thought it was. It was just slowly moving in the water. And he said it was right around the 5 foot, 6 foot zone, and its breast was fully above the waterline. So its breast was fully exposed all the way up to the head, wide shoulders. And he figured, man, this must be really one tall dude. So he gets 30 yards in, and he hears a chirping noise, like a bird chirping. Well, it's 3:30, almost 4 o'clock in the morning. Usually doesn't hear birds chirping like that. So he stops and he looks at it and he thinks, man, this man might be one of those, might be a druggie. You never know, coming in from the hallway cruise. And then he says that the figure starts getting out of the water. So he sits there and he watches it. And he said that and I've seen his pond in person, where he showed me exactly where he saw his first Sasquatch sighting. On the slope of this pond, it's about a 30-degree incline. And he said the figure got out of the water, and he saw the widest set of shoulders and back he's ever seen in his life. He said he probably saw about a maybe 6'7" to 7 foot figure. And he said with long strides, it walked right up the slope and into the woods, up a 30-degree slope. I mean, I've seen it, and you have to be almost on all fours to get up that slope without some sort of walking aid. So he just kind of baffled by it, decides, well, whoever it was, everything was quiet. There was no more grunting noises, no more groaning, no more anything. He figured, okay, maybe he's just seeing things. It's dark outside. Maybe just a man, maybe, whatever. Just play it off, go back home, get back to sleep. Everything's quiet. Snowstorm rolls through, pretty big snowstorm. And I forgot to add that during this time he heard the howling noise and saw this figure in his pond. They had been dynamiting Sidling Hill. They'd been blowing chunks of the mountain out. So wildlife was pretty stirred up in the area. Things that had been living there peacefully are now getting chased away by dynamite. January 6th, him and his son go out deer hunting. They needed game. They were low on meat, so they decided to go game hunting. They walk down the hill from their sodding hill on their property. They go downhill towards what we call 15 Mile Creek, runs through his property and mine. And usually deer go by the creek to drink the water, and you can hunt them there. He gets down into an open area where the pines kind of give way to an open plateau with a ridge line above it. And as he walks out into this open area, he's looking for deer. He's got his binoculars on. His son's, over there just sitting on a stump. His son was kind of young at the time, probably in about his early 20s, I guess. He hears a loud whacking noise, like somebody's hitting something against a tree. And like somebody's taking a branch and smacking against a tree, but it's a lot louder than that. So he's thinking, maybe there's a logger nearby, maybe there's construction workers nearby, maybe they're trying to get firewood, in his eyes, his property, but what's one tree? So the more he moves, the louder it gets. And downhill from them in the snow, they see a little something in the snow, and they think maybe an animal had died in the snow. So they go over there to inspect it, because, up here when we get snowstorms, it's not uncommon to find dead deer where they just died in the cold. We've had snow pretty bad where they just die. You'll find that the carcasses everywhere, the carrion everywhere. And so they get up to it, and it wasn't a deer, it was a hog. It was a domesticated hog that was completely ripped apart. Not something a bear would do. And it kind of set him back. And as soon as they got on top of this hog, the thwapping of that, the whacking of that tree branch on that tree, the only noise he could come up to be that, got louder and louder and faster. At that point, they had looked up. They were looking for the noise, and they looked up on a tree line. And on that ridge, they saw a brown-haired, 7-foot creature. They immediately got the hell out of there. He said neither of them talked about it for the rest of the week. They didn't tell the wife about it. They said they just didn't see any deer that day, and they're going to try again another day. And he said, he fought communist Chinese forces in Korea where they were, outnumbered you 10-1, and he had never been as frightened as that in his life. So he says the next time he sees it is right around about 14th of January to go out hunting again. This time they get an animal. It's getting late at night. Around here, 5 o'clock, it's pretty dark. Moon's out. And all your creatures are going away, and the nighttime creatures are coming out. And kill a deer. They were letting it hang. They were gutting it. They were cleaning it out in the field. And they heard a loud howling noise. They'd never heard it before. Followed by a lot of groaning and grunting, and they would heard a bunch of chirping noises. And then they heard the trees like moving. Something was pushing on the trees, the loud crunching of leaves, breaking sticks. Something was moving towards them, so they figured, okay, maybe it's a bear, maybe it's a mountain lion that smells the meat. It's going to investigate. So they took their time. They had guns. Usually animals stay away from you. Only it kept getting closer and closer, so they decided, let's pack up and let's get the hell out of here. As they were leaving, about 70 yards behind them, they saw it on the tree line. And they started moving quick. They knew this creature was here again. And they didn't look back behind them, and they kept running back to the cabin. The next day, they had gone back to the site, and they had seen that only 200 yards away from the cabin, the footprints had stopped. It followed them that far towards the cabin. They never even knew because they were running. They weren't paying attention. And he said you didn't even hear it following them. And that's what's frightened him the most. This so large of a creature, you didn't hear it when it didn't want you to hear it. It frightened the living shit out of him. He didn't see it again until February. In February, he had noticed that they had been putting garlic outside to dry it. And when they put the garlic outside, it would disappear. Any food they stored outside, because in the wintertime, and I do it as well, wintertime is like a natural freezer. You put things outside, up in the air, on stilts, typically away from bears. The food kept going missing. They'd put it outside, it would go missing in the middle of the night. So they decided they think it's this creature. They don't know what it exactly is. I mean, in their time, they didn't exactly know what a Bigfoot was. They had never seen the tapes from the 1960s and things like that. They didn't know what it was. And in his native culture, there was no such thing as the Bigfoot. And So they figured, okay, it's probably some creature that probably we've never seen before. It could be a bear. There was a lot of things going through their minds, and they even thought it was a man messing with them, dressed in a costume, messing with them. So they were going to put an end to it. So they got their guns, him and his son. They waited it around 1 o'clock in the morning, and they saw it come out of the wood line towards the cabin, and proceeded to climb this stilt and take the food. They had, I believe he said it was chicken in a pot, and they took the chicken right out of the pot and ran with it. They fired at it, didn't hit it, didn't draw blood. The next day, a neighbor had come by asking if they had seen his hog. It's been missing for a month, and they couldn't find it. Well, it's because this thing had stolen the livestock, had killed it. Later, in about once the dynamiting stopped, they didn't see the creature anymore, and according to him, he has never seen it. He says he has heard it over the years. I have never personally heard it or seen it, but once the dynamiting stopped, he believes the dynamite is what drove what he now knows as a Sasquatch to his best description. He believes that dynamiting is what drove this creature out of hiding, because they were dynamiting through a mountain, which it was a remote mountain at the time in the 80s. No one lived there. The town I live in now had a population of about 30 back in the 1980s, so no one would have came across it. So he believes that dynamiting is what forced the animal out, and he believes to this day it was a Sasquatch Bigfoot's ahead of his son. And they said throughout the 1980s they could hear it making bird chirping noises, communicating with what they believed was another one. They actually, in the 90s, a group had actually come by and documented it. I believe he said if you go on the internet, there's a documented sighting. Probably, it's on his property, but it's like a Google map and it shows the documented sightings of the United States. It's now a documented sighting. And everybody, some people doubt the existence of such creatures. I've personally never seen one, but I'm not going to doubt somebody else's encounter. If they saw it and they have other people with them saying they saw it, if it's one person who does a lot of meth, does a lot of cocaine, you're going to realize, yeah, they're just taking the piss. But when you have somebody who has never seen a creature like this in their life, they live in a remote Appalachian town, was little more than a logging village till the 1990s, early 2000s. Native American who in their culture had no Bigfoot, Sasquatch, to see something like this. And, in his culture, there's more of like the Wendigo, the cannibal, than it is the Sasquatch. So to see something like this, you can't really think that he fabricated this with an intelligent mind, because he just didn't know.
He had no concept of it.
Yeah, there was no concept of the Sasquatch, Now, I can understand if he was from the Pacific Northwest and he moved here, I can understand that here in Australia we have what they call the les. That's just a made-up fucking thing, We don't have actually a les in Australia. The only thing we have in Australia is spiders that will bite you and kill you in a few seconds. But, when he told me the story, I took it to account. Yeah. We have the world's King of the Hill Battle Royale in Australia. It's a fight to the fittest. God's strongest warriors with his strongest battles. But when he told me the story, I'm not gonna discredit him. Some people believe, some people do not. Personally, I've never seen one, but I'm open to on creatures that we haven't found before. Scientists find creatures they thought previously extinct all the time. So I'm not gonna say that he didn't see it. I've never seen it, never heard it, but it doesn't mean it's not out there. And especially when he had two people, him and his son, both seeing it, both frightened for their life, both equally feeling they were in danger in the presence of this creature, And some people, if you look at Pacific Northwest with the Haida people in British Columbia, they say they've had good encounters with them. They're well respected, and some people have had violent encounters with them. They were just generally scared for their lives. They didn't know what the hell they were up against. And
like Port
I don't know,
Alaska.
you don't meet people all the time who have a first-hand account. I guess you always see them on like television shows and the YouTube videos. You never really meet somebody with a first-hand account. That's the first time I've ever met somebody with a first-hand account.
Here's my theory. It's not. My buddy Paul told it to me, and very, very profound actually. they can never really get a good image of Bigfoot. It's always pretty low quality. So what he theorized, and I agree with, is that Bigfoot is actually just blurry. Bigfoot's just blurry. That's it.
He's just a blurry boy. He's low res. He doesn't pay premium subscriptions.
Yeah, Bigfoot's still on that 144p life.
Yeah,
He's still living 8-bit over there.
That's funny. But yeah, I think that one of the things that is somebody who has spent a lot of time out in the woods and stuff, you can tell because they generally don't discount things as quickly as somebody who it's kind of like a bell curve, right? Like you have the low end and the high end that will listen to what you're saying and think about it, and or just take it for face value and believe it. And then you have the main portion of the bell curve where it's like, oh, I don't believe in any of that crap. Yeah, that's not real.
It could never be
It's
real.
like,
Yeah.
it's like you have the lower IQ people that are just kind of gullible, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense, and they're
Children.
generally more like superstitious and scared of stuff like that. And then you have the higher IQ people that realize that every day you just realize that there's more that you don't know. And to really take in something like that, where, like you said, he's not he's not anybody who's doing anything crazy. He's fairly well respected all around. You can tell by the way he tells the story that he was genuinely scared. All this stuff. He has no reason to make it up. It's like, why would you not believe that he saw what he saw, right? Like what he saw is what the actual thing is might be debatable, but what he saw is like, that's it, right? So
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, man, I appreciate you coming back on, and if you got a lot more questions, then 100% we can make a third one, or if you just want to come back on, you're always welcome.
It's fun.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
Like I said, I don't have Instagram, so I have a friend of mine who does follow the Longhouse page, and he usually takes the questions for me. So I guess if anybody has any more questions that weren't answered now, just put them on the Instagram page, and we'll get answers to them.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Of course.
Yeah,
yep.
I mean, it was good. I just want to say it was good listening to the first one that you did, but you're obviously a very knowledgeable guy, and it's nice talking to you. Nice getting to talk to you.
Yeah, nice talking to you too, Nutria.
Oh, thanks.
I've never
really talked to anybody from the American South before, besides a few, visitors from Virginia and Carolinas. I've never really met someone from Mississippi.
Yeah, it's
keep it that way.
It's a different world down here. It is quite strange, but I like it.
Yeah.
I like the sip.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of my alarming things was I always was taught, Mason-Dixon line is divided between the North and the South. However, culturally, Maryland in most people's eyes isn't a part of the South. And some people say it is,
It's like Civil War, kind of stuff,
It's like a political thing.
Yeah,
but there's some weird things, for like West Virginia where I own property. Historically, the state left Virginia because they want to stay with the Union, but most people there fly a Confederate flag, so it's whatever.
Based.
Some of my great grandfather's rolling around in the grave right now doing little 360 spins.
Yeah. I mean,
it's funny.
I guess they just watched Dukes of Hazzard or something,
Yeah.
A lot of moonshiners up that way, so that would make sense, actually.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of moonshiners up here. I've drank some things that have turned my insides out.
It's like that White Lightning song.
Yeah, White Lightning, yeah.
Exactly.
George Jones.
Yep.
All right.
Well, also, thanks for that Bigfoot story too.
That was pretty nice.
That
was cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm off to sleep.
Same.
I'm tired, boy. And I actually do need to pray for me, because we're supposed to get hit with some really bad weather tonight. So that's the other great thing about the American South. Constant, terrible weather.
But you need to get a metal roof.
Yeah, I might actually just pick up the whole building, but
start building concrete bunkers, pillboxes.
Yeah, honestly,
concrete roof.
Exactly.
Well, see if you do the concrete roof, it's not going to rust.
Yeah.
And then it's so damn heavy on top that your house can't blow away.
Plus, no one can loot you if the whole house comes in and crushes everything. It's all equally destroyed.
Exactly.
There you go. It's like
No one,
self-destruct button.
The
no one can take
science
what's
is so
yours when it's all
solid.
destroyed. Well, I
Yeah.
can't have it. You can't have it.
Well, I can't have it. You
Yeah.
can't have it. Yeah. Nuclear
Especially
option.
when the alphabets roll up.
Yep.